I don't know. Say it with me. I don't know. Good God, it is liberating. I am a towering mountain of ignorance. I don't know. We're taught to believe that everything has a reason. And so we observe the world, we see what happened, and then we define the thing that happened as the reason the thing happened. But I think a lot of the time we end up mixing up thinking something with knowing something. This is why it can be so impossible to talk about certain topics with certain people. They've tied those suppositions to themselves so tightly with knots of narrative and constructed reality and values that there's just no untying it. And maybe unsurprisingly, in those situations, the best course of action is just to be friends. Maybe even ask them about that thing that they've created, because to them, it's immensely valuable. The world as we perceive it, as we've built it inside of ourselves, is a lie that we tell to ourselves, not out of deception, but out of necessity. We have no other choice. We simply cannot understand the world as it is, and so we construct. But sometimes I just have to tell myself the thing that is definitely true, the truest thing I can say, which is that I don't know.
Never know.
This is the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast with Bob Pondillo and Cass Midgley.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 169 of the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast. I'm Cass Midgley. Today, Bob and I converse with Tony Hupp. Tony is the father of Josh Hupp, our guest on episode 158. It might be good to listen to that episode first if you haven't already. This talk gets very emotional. Tony was in the Air Force for 24 years. He has 2 sons, both of whom he loves very much. And Josh, our former guest, was brainwashed by a cult in Tulsa, Oklahoma for several years that eventually made him forsake his family, place a restraining order on his dad, Tony, and the cult leaders took over as parents and overseers of the financial, romantic, and all aspects of their parishioners' lives. Tony tells the story of his attempts to rescue his son and the eventual homecoming. We taped this conversation on August 26th, 2017. We interview people you don't know about a subject no one wants to talk about. We hope to encourage people in the process of deconstructing their faith and help curb the loneliness that accompanies it. We think the world's a better place when more people live by sight, not by faith. Please subscribe to our podcast or leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, you can support us monetarily in 2 easy ways. You can pledge $1 or more per episode through Patreon. That's patreon.com/EA podcast. Or you can leave a lump sum donation through PayPal at our website, everyone'sagnostic.com. The smallest contribution is greatly appreciated. If you're a listener of this podcast and would like to be added to the private support community on Facebook, friend me on Facebook and let me know why you want to be added. I do screen applicants briefly to protect the confidentiality of the group. Our opening monologue is an excerpt from a YouTube by Hank Green, titled Towering Mountain of Ignorance. The music behind it is Never Know by Jack Johnson. The segue music on this episode is by Paul Thorn, a song called You Might Be Wrong, which we feature in full length in the middle of the interview. Thanks for listening, and be a yes-sayer to what is.
Test, 1, 2, 3, test. Religion, it's what separates people. And if there were a God, I think it very unlikely that he would have such an uneasy vanity as to be offended by those who doubt his existence. Amen. There's don't pray in my school, I don't think in your church. There's a Christian bookstore right down the street. I guess you guys, they get a lot of your business, huh?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's funny how it stays open. There's hardly ever anybody there.
Yeah, we got one like that in Knoxville.
I don't know what keeps them afloat. Maybe they're laundering drug money on the side. It's what it is. It's a laundering.
Probably selling porn in the back.
Something to keep it going.
So this is quite the setup here.
Yeah. So our guest today is Tony Hupp.
Hey, and Tony.
You might recognize that name Hupp from Josh Hupp. And we had Josh on a while back, and one of the probably the craziest story.
Yeah.
Out of all 160 plus episodes that we've done. I mean, people come out of religion, Christianity, with all kinds of wounds and traumas. but nothing like Josh.
Yeah, I've never heard anything like that.
Nothing like that. And part of his story was the rescue attempt by his father and family. And if I remember correctly, that was that time he was working at Lowe's or Home Depot or something, and he came home from work, and you guys were in the driveway, or at least on the curb. And so I guess maybe before we get into that.
Yeah, we were on the porch, we were talking about this thing. This is the same event, only from a different perspective, which I don't think we've ever done before.
No.
So, not that I can remember.
So I guess tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself to the listeners.
At the time this happened, I was in the military. I'm retired military. I was in the Air Force for 24 years. Retired, went back to work, though. I mean, I'm not retired, which I'd like to be.
Where are you working now?
I work at a government contractor in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and we do a lot of work for the government. I do mostly like apps, distance learning. I convert a lot of learning for the CDC into distance learning programs and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Oak Ridge is big government operation there. I mean,
big nuclear.
Yeah.
Invented the bomb.
Yeah,
that's right.
Oh boy,
the secret city.
A little boy and fat man.
That's right.
Now we have a little boy and a fat man running the country. Thank you very much.
Or playing with their nuclear toys.
That's right.
Kim Jong-un.
Yeah. Oh boy. Big. Oh, and that's another thing. You do podcasting. Don't you? But it's more political.
It's about politics. It's I do it with a friend of mine that we broadcast in the military together.
Oh, okay.
And so we started a podcast, and it's really, we get together twice a week and every once a week and beat our guns together. So
boy, well, you got a lot of stuff to talk about. That's for sure these days.
I listened to at least one episode a while back after Josh was on, and he told me about it. And,
well, thanks.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And I think what's really maybe kind of cool about that, and about any time this shows up, especially in this this bipartisan, polarized country that's just split down the seams right now, is that you guys were both talking openly and being honest and kind of crossing over the aisle every now and then.
I think that's kind of our genesis. It's called, if you don't mind, called Unfiltered and Unfettered.com. You can use the Google, or it's on iTunes.
Use the Google.
Unfiltered
and Unfettered.
Unfiltered and Unfettered. And we try to think through situations from a common sense perspective, because I think that's what happens today. If you're a Democrat or a Republican, you believe this or that because you're a Democrat or Republican. Mm-hmm. And that results in so many things not being resolved from a common sense perspective. And so we try to do that. I mean, we both have our political inclinations, but we try to say what's reasonable and what makes sense.
Yeah. Well, because we're tethered to some kind of loyalty to a certain group of people, as opposed to loyalty to the truth or personal agency, and saying, I'm going to think for myself and not just march to the beat of the drum that I'm supposed to. Fuck that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No.
Right. Exactly. And everybody does that, and we're so divided these days. And don't think something because you're a Democrat or Republican. Try to think about what would be a solution. We spend all of our time talking about our differences. We never spend any time talking about what we have in common.
Yeah,
right.
Maybe we could start there.
Yeah.
And resolve some problems.
And we have far more in common.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
Than we think, because I think it's just I don't want to get off track, but I think because of the 24-hour news cycle. And then news these days is not about news; it's about selling. No. And how do they get listeners? Controversial topics and selling things.
Mm-hmm. There is a demographic whose life is so boring and banal,
I think so.
And that when they can get worked up, like anger, at least, it's almost like when kids cut themselves.
Yeah, they feel something.
They're so numb in every aspect of their life that at least they can feel that, because they've got so much pain and anger built up inside that they cut themselves. Well, this demographic that I'm talking about has such a banal life that if they can experience anger, then it simulates like, oh, I'm alive.
Right.
And I had a person that was in my life very closely. I won't say anything, but I could tell that he loved getting worked up about something. And in the moments where he was on his rant, I think he felt power. I could just see it in his eyes. He felt when he was going off on Obama or Bush or whatever it would be, Especially when you're talking down to the most powerful person in the world from your armchair or from your front porch with lemonade, then you can go, I'm talking about, you can feel powerful, and that feels good. A lot of stuff, I just think a lot of this stuff strokes a neglected ego or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Fear. There's a lot of fear.
Exactly. Fear. I guess fear is what I'm talking about. I guess anger as well, but
like somebody's losing. We're losing something. We're losing our country.
Well,
those kind of things.
The other thing is that we feel helpless, we feel powerless, and so by talking about it, we pacify or appease that guilt that there's nothing I can do about this. Well, at least I'm talking about it to my neighbor, as if that's going to change the world in any way. I don't know, or liking something on Facebook.
Well, personally, I think social media is a big part of the problem, right? Because we say things on Facebook or Twitter that we would never say to somebody's face. But when you're sitting in your living room, the lights off, I can type this in and shoot it out, and there's no responsibility to the comment or whatever, and that just becomes more and more divisive.
Yeah. There was a guy in California who was just recently, I think it was California. Anyway, he said, I'm going to drive my truck in and I'm going to knock people down and stuff. And I think he got fired for that from his tire job that he was working at. And he said, I didn't mean that. I was just angry.
Well, it's a little too soon, right? I mean,
well, that's true.
The fact that it's happened in France and stuff. Well, it just happened in America 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, right.
This is a tough subject. I don't want to go down this, but you're basically saying we're talking about free speech, and
it's tough.
And I think it's worth saying, just we're going to touch on it for a second, is it's still illegal to yell fire in a theater. Mm-hmm. So free speech is limited to, like, you're going to hurt people by just blabbing off your mouth. You think you're playing a joke by saying fire in a theater, people are going to die, you're not allowed to say that. Mm-hmm. So I guess in the case where somebody's threatening to drive a car into a crowd of people, obviously we have, how is that different from saying fire in a theater, yelling fire in a theater? I don't know.
Yeah, don't do that. Why would you want to?
Tough subject being free.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. This ain't easy being free. Yeah, one of the reasons why religion thrives and why people sometimes like structure and government is that it's easier, and the nuances and the complications of being human and interacting with other humans are simplified by rules and structure. And so, next thing you know, we start encroaching on freedoms in order to simplify things or appease our fear. This is where the Patriot Act snuck in, right? Because we're afraid, and so all these people that are anti-big government just bowed to the Patriot Act because there was a moment there where their logic and their rational thinking was down, and the government just slipped it right in there, and the next thing you know, we've got rights and freedoms being infringed upon. Yeah. In the name of protection, and it's always what happens anyway. God damn it! This is not a political show.
We go kind of batshit crazy when we get afraid. Yeah, we do.
And we allow things to happen that we wouldn't if we were thinking rationally. Now, the reptilian brain, the fight or flight brain, will always be with us. We just don't always have to listen to it. We don't always have to bow to it. The thing, I think one of the phrases I love is that we're never going to be, fear is a good thing as far as it's why we're sitting here. Our genes are from people who responded to
they ran away.
Yeah, they responded, and so it serves us well to listen to it. And I think sometimes we say, okay, fear says don't do this, and then we can say to fear, thank you. I'm telling you, this is cognitive therapy, really. You can say to your fears, thank you. I know that you mean well and you're trying to protect me. However, I am still going to do this thing. You're welcome to come with me because I think you're valuable to me and your voice and opinion is valuable. I'm not just going to necessarily do everything you tell me to do because I'm a big boy. But come alongside and let's go into this fearful thing together. I'm just saying.
Yeah, sure. No, I understand.
No, it's beautiful, Cass.
Yeah,
it's poetry, man.
I like that. When people say, you've got to respond. And sometimes it's worth it for us to listen to our intuition, but, it's like the students I used to go to say, well, we need to be in the moment all the time. And I'm like, well, my dog's in the moment, but he licks his balls and he's not saving for college. You know what I mean?
That's a fantastic point.
Sometimes we've got to be cognitive about things.
I love this point, and I think I love this. This is really a weird thing for me because I'm a big Zen guy. I mean, I'm a big Buddhist guy as far as disattachment from outcome and all this stuff and being in the moment.
Sure.
Eckhart Tolle, say yes to the moment in the whatever form it's taking, cooperate at least, and overcome it. I mean, it's not necessarily just being passive, but this whole thing about being in the moment, you're right, animals are always ever only in the moment because they don't have any consciousness of their own existence.
Right.
Or fear of death because they don't even know that they're going to die. That's all afforded by the prefrontal cortex. So this notion, wholesale, to be in the moment is not necessarily true.
Right. Not when you got to pay a mortgage.
Yeah.
I get it. You know, me and my wife are scuba divers, and when you're doing that activity, you are just in the moment. It's just the experience of being there. Mm-hmm. You're not thinking about what happened 10 minutes ago or 10
or
minutes
your mortgage
or nothing or your mortgage. You're just experiencing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes you got to think about, you know, what's going to happen next year.
Well, when you get back on the boat and you take your snorkel off or everything off, you know, you got bills waiting for you back home.
That's right.
So there's a time and a place. That's all it's saying. It's nuanced moderation. It's always moderation.
Yeah. Good point.
Okay, so Tony, I know that. Tell me about your religious background, because you raised Josh in a Christian home, am I right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he went and took it to the nth degree into toxic places and everything. But your journey, as far as how you were raised, the religion your parents passed on to you, what you did with it, and then I want to get to what you've done with it since the cult experience.
Sure. I mean, I guess I would call my upbringing pretty typical. My mom, you know, was a God-fearing Christian till the day she died. We went to what I called it a Northern Baptist church. I don't think there is such a thing. It's not a Southern Baptist church. Okay.
No, there is. I mean, it's not with a capital proper noun name, but there's certainly a differentiation that's worth making. What state were you in?
I was born and raised in Ohio.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Which part?
Really? Akron.
Oh, I was born in Youngstown.
No kidding.
Not very far from Akron.
Not very far.
About 40 minutes or so.
Wait, how old are you?
I'm 57.
Okay.
Yeah, how about that? Yeah, I used to work on the radio there.
Oh, okay.
WKBN radio in Youngstown. Yeah,
nice.
Yeah,
you know, there's a chance that as a kid you heard
that
Bob on the air.
Yeah,
quite possibly. Yeah.
Probably not if you were on a country station, but other than that,
I wasn't. Okay. Yeah.
So what kind of music were you listening to back then?
You know, I was a rocker, man. I was a Zeppelin and all that stuff. I'm a child of the 70s, you know.
Yeah.
What we did back then.
Well, for our listeners' sake, I'm looking at a Tony Hupp with hair on your shoulders.
Yes.
You've got long hair, and yet used to be military. I'm sure at one point it was buzz cut.
Well, when I was a teenager, I looked like this. Well, no, I looked a lot better than this.
Yeah, me too, as I recall.
And then I joined the military, and for 24 years I was clean cut, clean shaven, tied together troop, and then I retired. And
back to the hair, back to the hippie.
That's
freedom,
right.
freedom,
That's right.
Man. Yeah.
So she took us to church, and when I got old enough not to go, I didn't go anymore. It just wasn't for me. My dad, I don't know that he ever went.
Did they stay together?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are they either alive?
And neither one of them.
Okay.
My mom just passed away about 3 years ago at the age of 91.
Wow.
But my dad passed away pretty young. He was 63. I was in my early 20s. I joined the military, got married before I joined the military, and my wife is really the one that drove the going to church and taking the kids and everything. Yeah. And I was kind of a halftime guy, I guess. Mm-hmm. I mostly went out of guilt for not going with her and not kind of being supportive as a family person. And all
it's
that
an old Victorian notion, this idea that the wife is the moral center of the family and stuff. You know?
I guess, yeah.
Is she the wife you're still with?
Absolutely.
How many years is that?
I'm gonna get the date wrong. You really put me on the spot. This September,
general ballpark.
This September 17th, I think it'll be 39 years. So.
Wow!
Jeez.
Congratulations.
Yeah, one woman all in a row.
That is all in a row.
I used to have a friend that said he'd been married for 25 years, but it was 4 different women. And
That's right.
That's so true.
Yeah,
that really is true, and I think that's worth. I mean, every 10 years, every 7 years, our cells change, right?
Right.
And we are evolving people, and it's both and, right? Because at the core, we're all the same, but we are evolving, and we have different interests. And the cool thing about being or it can be cool. And I don't condemn anybody who puts a fork in their marriage for good reasons. I mean,
Sure, yeah.
I'm not
absolutely.
judgmental about it like I used to be as a Christian, like shame on you for divorcing because God said it was a sin or something. Fuck that. But if you're able to stick it out, this kind of grass is greener desire to fuck something new,
Right.
just hang out a while, and she changes, and the next thing you know, you're kind of
Well, so do you.
yeah,
sure.
and you're with a new woman.
It's look, everybody's going through hard times, and we've been through our share. But it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah, there's some depth there, and there's some equity in that.
There's a lot
house.
of equity.
Yeah.
And I think we're really good friends. I always say, these young people that get married, and they say, the saying they go, today I marry my friend. I say, if you're a guy and you say you're marrying your friend, you're marrying a dude. Because if you're marrying a woman, that's a different construct right there. So
I think that's a valid point.
Yeah. I hear you.
So
I've often thought that I would love to be married to a dude with a vagina
that would be,
because
probably
I relate
perfect.
more to dudes.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
But I
That's
want
what-
some pussy.
That's kind of my point. But when you've been together for as long as we have, we've got to the point where we can relate to each other on that way. I mean, we play the same video games and all that kind of nonsense.
Are you saying you've become more effeminate?
No, I'm not saying that. But I appreciate you making that point, though. And I'm not saying that she's become more masculine either.
Okay,
Don't,
so
don't get me in trouble here.
Well, you were implying that you've met in the middle somewhere, so I was
Yeah,
just calling that, and that you're saying it's not necessarily the gender roles; it's just that we understand the other.
If you've been together for 39 years, you better have something, right?
Yeah.
I've always said I don't tolerate miserable. I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
No, I've had
yeah.
enough of that. I know what you mean. Yeah.
good.
So, anyways,
Yeah.
then we got married, and she was kind of the driver there, and her family, still and to this day, many of them are kind of the what do you call it, Pentecostal nature,
Oh, wow.
Assemblies of God, the hand raisers,
Hand raisers,
Sure.
speaking tongues.
Oh, see
those
my
kind
bow
of-
tie, yeah, that kind of stuff.
Oh, that was one of your, your speaking in tongues.
We always say shit about a Honda, but what is
Oh,
this?
that's
I
good.
see my boat.
Oh, see my bow tie.
Oh, see my boat. So if you say that over and over again, you'll get filled with the Holy Spirit.
Oh, see my bow tie. I have to remember that.
And yours was
Should have bought a Honda.
should have bought a Honda.
Could have bought a
That's
Honda.
good- yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. So yeah, we went and for me it was a difficult experience because if you're going to a place with people that believe a certain thing and you don't believe that, you're kind of on the outside, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, why are you going? If you're going to a book club, not reading the books, stop going.
And you might
so
have to keep it to yourself, otherwise they're going to see you as a...
You almost can't, though, in that Pentecostal kind of environment, and people can look at you and look.
You're not participating.
You're not participating, and so it was always kind of an outsider experience for me to go and be in the non-kind of. I would say I'm a non-believer, but I would say that just not for me. That's just not for me. I don't do that. I don't pray every time I have a flat tire, and I figured just get out and change the damn thing, right?
Yeah.
I
Kind
think
of makes sense.
So do you know the difference in deism and theism?
Yeah.
So theism is a personal God that
Yeah.
helps you change your
Right.
tire. Deism is an unknowable, ineffable, unthinkable, undefinable God that may or may not be there, but does not interact with human beings. But there's just kind of almost an acknowledgement that there may be something that started the Big Bang.
That's the name of your podcast, right? Everyone's agnostic. So,
Right.
we don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah.
And that's I guess that probably explains me. I found out I wasn't a Christian by listening to my son's podcast when you ask him, and he said, "No, my dad's not a Christian." And I, whoa, okay.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah.
That's the first time you've heard of that, right? Okay.
Wow.
I guess I had I consider myself culturally, I guess, a Christian. I had a Ram Hare, the British philosopher. He was in a seminar in the University of Tennessee one time, and he's an atheist. And he said he had a conversation once with a fellow from a Muslim country who was an atheist, which is kind of hard to imagine, but that he got out alive. But he said they had a conversation, and what they realized after talking to each other for a while is they both didn't believe in different gods. Right, but that's referring to the cultural aspects of how we're raised. So.
Yeah. Good point.
Well, I think about that that song, I think is it Mark Cohen that did Walking in Memphis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, so he's a piano player. He visits Memphis and he visits Al Green's church, and he's playing piano. And they asked him to come up and play piano, and some woman from the choir says, "Are you a Christian?" He says, "Ma'am, I am tonight."
That's right.
And there is this. And again, going back to the title of the show, really what we're going for is humility. When it comes to the ontological questions, come on. Certainty is what fucks you up, and it's what gets you to fly planes into buildings and shit. So calm the fuck down. Admit you really don't know. And if everybody would acknowledge their own agnosticism...
I know.
Bob knows, yeah.
I know. There isn't. They've had 2,000 years. That's enough. We know. We know already.
But see, how is that not dogmatic atheism?
I don't know, but I mean, it just makes sense to me.
Well, I think we can say that there's not an interventionary God, and I think there's evidence that there's not that. But anyway, the point
people
being,
just want to hang on to it.
Yeah.
Anyway. You know who Paul Thorn is? You ever heard of Paul Thorn? He's a singer-songwriter, and I think that he comes from a religious background, but he does a song that's called You Might Be Wrong, right? And it's basically like, whatever you believe, you just take it easy, because you could be wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, I was reading an article in a newspaper on an airplane one time, and I was reading an interview with our former president, Bill Clinton, and he said something that stuck in my head. He said, "Whatever you believe, you might be wrong," and that stuck in my head, and I think that's really true. And so here's a song called "You Might Be Wrong." Christians, Buddhists, and Jews got their own version of the truth. There's a line in the sand, there's a war going on. They forgot to remember, you might be wrong. Carry your faith everywhere you go. Mix it with love and let it show. But keep your mind open as you move along, and always remember you might be wrong. Why do we argue? Why do we fight? Everybody thinks God's on their side. Just count to 10 before you throw a stone. Whatever you believe, you might be wrong. Don't cut me off, don't say we're through, just because I don't agree with you. You see, flowers grow where seeds of love are sown. You could be right, you might be wrong. Why do we argue? Why do we fight? Everybody thinks God's on their side. Just count to 10 before you throw a stone. Whatever you believe, you might be wrong. What's on the other side of life? I won't know until the day I die. If you feel insecure, you are not alone, 'cause everybody knows you might be wrong. Why do we argue? Why do we fight? Everybody thinks God's on their side. Just count to 10 before you throw a stone. Whatever you believe, you might be wrong. That'll get me kicked out of my family.
Yeah. And I usually go with that, but not on religion for some reason. I just think, no, come on, man. No. That's just me, though. So don't mind me. I sit in the back here.
That's why you're here. I love that about you.
Yeah.
So you, as a 24-year career military guy, you bounce around the globe, or
Yeah.
So name some of the countries you've lived in.
Well, as far as countries, the only country I was ever stationed in was Germany.
Okay.
We lived in Germany for a while. did the whole European thing. Was there when the wall came down, which was very cool.
That was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was also there for the kickoff of Desert Shield, Desert Storm, which was not cool.
Not cool. Yeah.
But yeah, and lived over the country, Oklahoma and Ohio, North Carolina, Mississippi. Well, I was in Mississippi. My family wasn't. But yeah, bounced around in 24 years.
How many kids you got beside? I mean, Josh and
it's just Josh and Justin. My youngest son's named Justin. Yeah.
Yeah, and Justin was a big part of his testimony now that I remember. As far as they're really close.
Sure. Yeah, they are.
That's great. You're in Knoxville.
Right.
We're in Murfreesboro, 3-hour drive or so. Josh is in Nashville. You going to have lunch with him later today?
Well, actually, he's driving over to Knoxville today because we're going to watch the fight tonight. Yeah.
The fight.
I'm a sucker. Geez. Yeah, we're going to watch it. So.
You paid $99 for that. Oh, baby.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Wow.
Is that Mayweather?
Mayweather and this other guy who...
Conor McGregor. But you have to say Conor McGregor.
Irish.
But,
Scottish, I think.
Yeah.
Scottish? Yeah. So I read somewhere where it's just really lopsided. Like
be
that's
careful.
What they say.
Be careful because this guy's the Mayweather is a real fighter.
I finally heard a guy talk about it the other day that justified my actually watching it because I've not done a pay-per-view in a really, really long time. But he said, well, it's an event. It's not.
Oh, okay.
If you're going to it for the box, it's like watching the Super Bowl and it's 45-10. The game sucked, but it was still the Super Bowl. So I said, okay, that's the reasoning I'm using to get this.
Yeah,
well, you never know.
McGregor
may come around with a foot or something.
They have odds in Vegas about him getting disqualified for that.
Oh, really? So then he's not supposed to do that?
Oh, no. It's
supposed to be a boxing match.
This is not MMA.
Geez.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Well, then maybe not. Anyway, back to the
so he's coming over.
So you're passing ships right now, kind of, or at least...
He's coming over at some point today, yeah.
Okay. Sure. So you're just going to head right back after this?
Probably.
Wow, thanks for that. I thought maybe you'd have more reasons to come to town.
Oh, no, thank you. Well, if he wasn't coming over for the fight, I would go over and spend the day with him.
Sure.
No, but thanks for having me. I appreciate you doing this.
Well, one thing we know about Josh is he loves you. He loves the family and he loves you.
He does, yeah.
And and after the story he told, it was good that you opened your arms and embraced him because, man, he went through a shitload of stuff. For those who don't remember, Josh was in this cult where they beat him up and he beat up other guys and a terrible.
So part of Josh's journey, it took him to Oral Roberts in Tulsa. Got involved in a kind of a house church movement, which can really, the thing about all cults, I'm talking about Jim Jones. Everybody who was there at the beginning says it was dynamic, it was beautiful, it was powerful, it was interracial. You know, if you remember Jim Jones, and interracial churches are pretty rare. You know, Sunday morning is one of the most divided moments of American zeitgeist. And so he gets in. He goes to this church. The pastor's white. The pastor's wife is black. They're opening and loving, and
she's sort of a psychic or something, right?
Well, she's a prophet.
A prophet,
yeah,
a prophet.
But this thing we talked about Love Bomb a few weeks back on an episode, but and how the way it's literally a phenomenon that cults use, whether it's intentional or not. They flood you with love, and until they feel like you're invested enough to where they can kind of bring out the meaner side of things, and you won't leave. So this is a thing called Harmony Worship Center,
right?
Which is still around, by the way. Not in its same iteration, but it's out there.
Yeah. Well, this same pastor and his wife are still,
who went to jail for a while, I guess, or
did they
for assault?
For assault, and then they got out, and then they still have their church.
Oh, they're still doing their thing.
Apparently.
Jeez.
But the way the story went is, I guess tell us about the timeline, because you're out there in Knoxville, he's in Tulsa, and as far as you know, he's just going to college.
Right.
When did you start getting signs that this was getting dangerous, or this was...
The first time we went there. Sure.
Yeah. We drove to see him.
Yeah, we went out to visit him one time, and he had told us, I'm going to this church, Harmony Worship. So we didn't know anything about it, It's just, he'd told us it's a new church, and, he was excited about it. And so we went out there to visit him one time, and we went there. And, the first time we went there, it's like, man, this is bad news.
You had a bad feeling. Was it still meeting in a house?
It was. No, at that point, no, they weren't meeting in the house yet. They were meeting in like a classroom at a high school.
Okay, renting space.
Yeah, I guess. And we went in there, and yeah, it was for me personally, it was creepy right from the start for a couple of reasons, and I'll give them to you because I think it's part of the story of how this happened. Number one, we went in there, and they were all kids. I mean, they're going to college, but they ain't no 35-year-old college. They were all kids to me.
20-somethings.
Yeah,
or less.
Early 20-somethings at the most. There was one middle-aged woman that was going there, but she didn't last very long. But we talked to her that first time. So first of all, you got a group of kids with these two middle-aged people
leading them. Second of all, yeah, you're right. I mean, you're talking about the love bomb. I mean, the way she interacted with them to me was very creepy because it was like, oh, these are all my kids. These are all I'm taking care of your son. He, means it was just weird. But I'll tell you the biggest thing that red flagged it is, as you said, it was a black woman and a white man, and everybody in the church, it was all black women and all white men. Really?
Exclusively. Now, except for one white girl, it was Tammy and Zach. They were already together when they went to the church. She was the only white woman there. And so when you walk in there and there's a big group of kids and you look at that and you say to yourself, that doesn't happen by accident, right? I mean, the fact that there wasn't any older people going in there, that was a big red flag too, because like if you went to a church that was meeting somebody's living room, you would expect to find a little, some older, some younger. They were all kids. And they split the racial thing, all black women, all white men. And look, I'm not getting into a racial. I'm just saying that doesn't happen by accident. Well, that I looked at that and I said this is weird.
Okay, but it doesn't happen by accident, but it also, you can't orchestrate that. Like, you can't turn people away at the door and say, oh, you're a white woman, you're not allowed, or you're a black man, you're not allowed.
Yeah. Right.
And so it did kind of happen organically.
Was it a gender thing, though? Like the men on this side and the women on the other side?
No.
It wasn't like an Amish.
I don't remember
I
that.
think at best we can say this is freaking weird.
Yeah,
that's right.
And
unusual. Yeah,
that's
something's
right.
up.
And that would be like, I don't understand how this is happening.
So yeah, when we left, and I mean, we didn't say anything to Josh, but when me and Susan on the way home, it was like that's weird. That's a weird thing.
So the woman that Josh was with when they started going there, like were they married by then? No, they were just or was he single when he started going there?
Yeah. He went out there because some girl went there as well.
That's right.
And he kind of chased her, but that didn't last at all.
Well, because the pastor's wife told him not to see her. I mean, the woman
that could have been.
I think the woman that he was originally attracted to when he was there.
Well, if you're talking about inside the church,
yeah.
He was interested in one woman, and Jan said, "No, this woman is for you."
Yeah, she redirected his.
They've got a word for it, and I don't remember what it is.
But she's the prophet, and so she knows who God wants you to be with.
That's the setup.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the very first time. It was like, yeah, that's a weird thing.
So you and your wife are in your car driving back, and I'm sure the conversation was, that was weird.
I actually said to my wife, I said, you realize someday they're going to all get in a U-Haul and we're going to have to go find them in Utah or West Texas somewhere, right?
You had that intuition.
Oh,
yeah, for the very first time.
And so how long before the next time you visited?
It was a while. I know the next time we visited, they were in the house. They were meeting in the living room.
Would you say a year or two?
Yeah, maybe. It was probably a year, I think.
And then take us into that room.
It was just equally weird.
More.
Here's what bothered me about that is it was in their living room. There was no other signs that it was a church. So it's like, are you trying to grow? Or
no?
They had become, to me, I'll use this word, and I don't know if it's exactly correct. You guys are smart, or maybe
insular,
ethnocentric. Okay, it was the same group that it was a year ago. Now I don't know if some people came and left in that time. I don't know. I just know that I knew those 8 guys and they're still here, and I knew those 10 women and they're still here,
right.
And now they're meeting in a living room. The other thing that really rang the alarm bell for me that time is Will, who was the guy that eventually got my son out. But he went up at some time, so we went out there and we attended. And we were the only ones not in the group,
You were the visitors.
Yeah, we were the visitors, the only visitors. And so Will at some time got up, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but he was doing a little segment. He wasn't giving the sermon, but he was doing like his little
testimony
bit or whatever.
Yeah.
And he was going to he gave a little talk on finances. And at some point in time, he said something that made me realize, like, they're balancing these kids as checkbooks. They're into their money. And I don't remember what it was, whether he referred to your counseling sessions with the pastors or something like that.
Right.
But I said, man, and again, when we left, I told my wife, I said, look, they're into these kids' money.
Yeah.
And I don't remember. I mean, I've got some notes I can refer to if I get off track. I mean, I don't remember at what point in the timeline it was, but I mean, at some point in time, I told Josh. I mean, we had a phone conversation. I said, "Look, man," I said, "if it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, it acts like it's a duck." And I probably didn't call it a cult, but I'm sure that I told him it was cultish, and that was my perspective from the outside. Now, I'll tell you the other thing is that because of our relationship, and we had a good relationship, but when it came to religion, we didn't, because I was the non-participator, right? So
you were the skeptic.
Oh yeah. And so I just got I just got blown off, as you would think. Oh, Dad, you don't know, this is great, we're going to do great things. I said, look, man, this looks weird to me, I'm just telling you.
Well, then this is right around the time chronologically where all humans do kind of cut the umbilical cord. He's getting his myelin sheath, he's in his early 20s. He's starting to think for himself, and we know the story that this is when he's establishing independence. However, what sucks about all this is that instead of truly getting his independence, like saying, I am a separate entity from my parents and coming into his own, he literally just kind of transferred his allegiance to you and your wife to these cult leaders, because they wanted to be his parents. They wanted to control his checkbook. They wanted to control his romance life. They wanted to control everything. And so instead of gaining agency and independence, which he should have been doing chronologically at that time, he just deferred it to a new set of freaks.
Well, and also, it was and that's part of the age thing to me, is it was a big peer group. It was a big group of kids that were all developing together, unknowing, I think, unable to say, this wouldn't, I assume, this would never happen to us, because at some point in time we would go, this is fucked up.
Yeah, that's what Bob says every week.
That's bullshit. Yeah. Come on. Let's go. Let's have a beer.
Well, there was nobody there to say that.
Right. And the other thing is that when kids go off to college, that's a college town. It's a very Christian town. There's tons of really weird Christianity going on in that town. And kids are maybe a little homesick. And I mean, you can appeal to that. Like these... I mean, I don't know how. It's hard to know how much volition and menacing or malicious intent is on the part of the cult leader, but you got really sitting duck targets here. These
but
kids.
Too, because you used to do that.
Well, but I can tell you from my perspective, I never intended to start a cult, but part of what I started as a church from scratch. It started in the living room and kept getting bigger. When you're a non-denominational thing, you're not accountable to the Southern Baptist Convention or the Methodist
Catholics,
Orthodox or whatever, and so you're kind of making it up as you go. You have very little accountability, and if you have twisted perspectives of human beings, which I think is what we can see in Jan and this guy, is that these kids by themselves are lost and they need us, and that strokes their ego. And for some reason, they may have internally felt like they were doing a good thing by taking over the lives of these people. But where it got weird, and this is where I'm going to go now, is that they basically said, "We are your parents now, and you need to disassociate your family." And that's where you, Tony, said, "No."
Right.
And it was a third visit now. Are we talking about?
There were two visits. Yeah. There were two visits. I mean, after things went bad, there were two visits, yeah.
Yeah, so we've talked about the two where you and your wife were like, this is weird.
Yeah.
Second visit, this is still weird and maybe weirder. So the third and fourth visits are about rescuing you.
Well, they weren't even visits in that perspective.
Okay.
Yeah, so
they wouldn't let you in the door.
No, I don't know. That's a good question. Well, I'm sure that they wouldn't have let me in the door. The first time, the first time actually, it was when Josh had said he wasn't going to have anything to do with us anymore, and we had like the big psycho phone call, and like because of it was, dude, everything was, because of what you've done and all the things you've done, and you've tried to control me, and I'm not.
This is Josh. This is
Josh talking to us. Yeah,
the phone call no parent ever wants to hear.
Right, and it was just psychotic. It was just psychotic. Now, over a very short period of time, it went from, you're just going to this weird church to this bad shit's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow.
He stopped calling us. We finally got a hold of him. Then we found out, and he'd been married. He'd got married to Rhonda, and they'd actually visited us one time.
Huh.
And she was fine, lovely young lady. I liked her. Actually, that was back when I was a big runner, and she went running with me. And, I just thought, hey, this is my daughter-in-law. It's great. She's fine, articulate.
But you weren't invited to the wedding.
Oh, we went to the wedding.
Oh, okay.
Sure. Yeah, we went to the wedding because that was before it went bad, too. But again, creepiness, it's just everything is weird. The wedding started an hour late.
I hate that.
Well, and it started an hour late because I call her the witch because she was in charge.
Yeah.
And it didn't start for any other reason than she wanted people to know.
I'm in charge.
And it was even going bad then because Josh had called me and he said, he's getting married and and there's some people I'm not going to invite. And I'm like, well, why? Well, because they're bad people and they're hypocrites and all this kind of stuff. And I was kind of like, well, Josh, you can't. I honestly, for a while, I thought he was talking about me. And I was like, well, I know it's your day and everything, but man, if you're going to start separating family members, that's bad. So anyways, yeah, we went to the wedding. But then the first visit out there was after he wouldn't talk to us. We couldn't get a hold of him.
Well, let me go back and talk about this phone call, because when you get a call from a child, I've got 4 children, and no matter how good and how hard you work to be a good parent, you're going to fuck up.
Well,
in 18 years of one per child, if you think about their, the span of time over which you are their authority, you're going to demonstrate. Sure. You're going to have a fit of rage, or for me, I've made some mistakes. So I have told my kids from the beginning, you're all going to need therapy for the way I parented you.
You made your contribution to psychotherapy there.
And amongst American dads, I would probably come out pretty fucking high on as far as how good a dad I was. However, we're all fucked up, we're all flawed, and we know they don't come with owner's manuals, these kids. And so you make mistakes. So if and when somebody ever wanted to brainwash my children and say, that time your dad took a wooden spoon to your ass, and that time that your dad promised to take you fishing and he didn't. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you want to turn a kid against their parents, I think there's plenty of ammunition to do so, especially just by a good person being human. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to put myself on the other end of that phone when my child calls and says, you just said some phrases like, I forget what you said, but the things that he said to you, which was an indictment on your parenting, said some things about how you had treated him or whatever, and even as he's talking, you've got to be freaking the fuck out, like, and he's slipping through our fingers, even in this phone call. Talk about, what kind of stuff did he accuse you of?
Cass, I don't remember specific things. Well, like I was a lustful person. That's why he was a lustful person. Now,
how did that manifest to him?
Because he had a phone call with us and said, like, I'm a dog, I'm no good, but these people are going to make me good.
Oh, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
The way that cult emphasized lust and masturbation, and he had some wet dreams, which means that you're not masturbating. The only reason you have wet dreams is you haven't ejaculated for a long time and your body just is blue-balled. So it's so natural, it's so normal, et cetera, and yet they shamed him for it.
They shamed everybody for everything. That's what they did.
Yeah. And so because somehow he knew that you were also a lustful person, well, let's just say it. All men are lustful.
No, I'm not casting.
Yeah, right. My dad was the most upstanding citizen in my town. He was president of the bank, chairman of the board. He was literally the first. They started a thing called Citizen of the Year, and he was the first.
Nice.
It became an annual award, but he was the one that instigated it because he was such an upstanding guy. And I found Playboys, one time in his closet, Mm-hmm. So it's like men will be men. And so if they're going to come at him with like shaming his lust, and he's like, I got it from my dad.
That's,
Okay.
Yeah. And I will tell you initially that I was an easy target. I was in the military. I was a drinker, a smoker, a cusser. Now, I didn't cuss exorbitantly around my kids when they were young, But I mean, it doesn't take too much to figure out this guy's not an angel, right? And so, yeah. So I got that, but, the thing that bothered me is my wife never deserved that. I mean, But yeah, so we got the big psycho call, like, you're bad, and that's why I'm bad, and they're going to help me, and you're not my parents anymore. And
ooh.
Oh, yeah.
That phrase right there, that's a stab to the heart.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was a...
That had to be.
There was a couple phone calls leading up to the big one, but then we had that one that's like, we're done.
Does this come from that Bible thing that says,
Unless
forsake your parents?
Yeah, Jesus said, unless you hate your mother and father for my sake, you're not worthy of my kingdom.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So that was it. We
red letter, man. It's
bullshit.
Right there.
He wouldn't have anything to do with us, so we drove out there, waited for him to come home.
Yeah.
It's okay.
So yeah, it still catches me. So waited for him to come home and got out of the car, said his name. We got to take a...
Yeah, sure.
Take a break. Take a break.
It's all right, man.
I promised myself I wouldn't cry.
It's okay.
That's all right.
Still throws me up.
Well, sure. I mean,
We can
family.
edit this out. It's no problem.
Okay. So waited for him to come home, and I got out of the car and called his name, and he turned and ran.
Yeah. Ran back in the house.
He didn't make it to the house. I ran after him, and before he got in the house, he turned and leaned up against the door. I guess he figured he couldn't get inside without me catching him or something. And he just turned around. I said, Josh. And he said, what are you doing here? And I said, I came to visit you and talk to you. I got your mom and your brother and your grandmother. And he said, well, you've made a mistake. And I said, well, we're here. So he said, well, wait till I go inside. And so he had to go in and call them.
right.
Call
I
the witch
remember
and
that.
the bitch, yeah. And so then he came out and went to dinner with us, but it wasn't him. And I'll tell you, when he leaned in that corner, I looked in his eyes and he wasn't there.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's hollow.
Yeah, I don't know how to explain that.
Even
but
the fact that he went inside to call, what he's doing is, they're here, what do I do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's literally, you've surrendered your agency. You're not able to think for yourself. Tell me how to interpret the fact that my parents are here. Tell me what to do. Tell me what to think. And obviously, she gave him permission to go out to dinner with you.
Apparently.
But maybe gave him some specific instructions of, he's a robot at that point.
Yeah, he is.
That is just
and you can't,
unbelievable.
that's one of the,
Wow.
it's one of the things that you learn the hard way is that you can't argue with them
No.
because they have their line, their pre-rehearsed line. And if you go outside of that, they just won't talk with, or they'll just go back. It's a loop. It's
Yeah.
a loop.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't deconstruct by logic and reason where a place where they got
No, you can't.
but without logic and reason.
So I'm assuming that this is then after the psychic or whatever, the prophet
Right.
says, Josh, you have lustful thoughts for that woman over there, and we will not have that. And so then the guys beat him up.
Well, that had already happened, I believe, but we didn't know about it yet.
Right.
That was actually our second trip out there when we went out there.
yeah.
Wow.
So this and you want to talk about, earlier on you said, tell us where you're at now with church and tell us where you're at then. This was part of the downfall right here so we went out to dinner and, they were very stoic and argumentative, and it's just like, we don't even know why you're here. What do you want? Just go
Stiff,
away.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
which is not
defensive
my son. I
and
mean, if you know
guarded.
my son, my whole family, we don't get through 10 minutes without laughing about something, even if we don't think it's funny. I mean, we're just a gregarious bunch normally.
Yeah. And present.
Yeah. And he was very much
he's
not
guarded.
that.
He's got a big wall up.
So you asked me about how I feel. So the next morning, we hanging out, trying to figure out what we're going to do. Well, one of the things I did is I called the ORU Dean of Men's Students, right? And he knew who the group was because they'd already banned their little van from coming on campus. And so I called him and I explained who I was. I said, I'm going to be out here for 2 days. I said, I know you don't know me, but my son goes to your school and he's a member of this church. And I just want to come by and talk to you. I just want to know what you know and if you could suggest any resources. Because at that time, my thought was, if I could get some religious leaders in Tulsa maybe involved and even maybe go talk to these people.
Yeah.
Because just from this is off the rails, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think things like this thrive in darkness.
They do.
And you're trying to shine a light on it.
Trying to.
Yeah.
So he said, well, I don't have the time. And I said, well, I'm going to be here for 2 days. I just want a half an hour. That's all. He goes, well, I don't have the time. I said, well, look, I'll make I'll make whatever provision I need to make. I just want to come meet with you. And again, I wasn't being... And he finally said to me, he said, Mr. Hupp, I'm not going to meet with you, but I'll pray for you and your family.
Oh, fuck
And
that.
I said, go fuck yourself. That's exactly what I said.
Awesome. Good for you. Here's the thing about a dean of students. They're in charge of the students.
That's right.
They're in charge of the morale. They're in charge of the safety.
Yeah.
This is a complete surrender
That's
of his
exactly
ability.
what happened, because I said, and that's when he finally said that. I said to him, look, you're the dean of men's students, and my son is a student. I just want to meet with you for half an hour. And that's when he said that.
Wow.
I'm not going to meet you, but I'll pray for you. And I said, well, go fuck yourself. If you don't got the balls to meet with me, I don't need your fucking prayers either.
Or to do your job.
So,
Wow.
So, I mean, you want to know about how I feel about that kind of thing. Like, look, isn't this the place with the 900-foot Jesus?
Yeah.
Right?
It
You
is.
can get
Or the
everything done.
praying hands.
You know, you can do all this stuff. So here's a little bit about, not to get off the subject, but you want to know, I mean, I just despise westernized Christianity, because to me, this was the Super Bowl, right? This is a spiritual battle. If you say that's what you believe, here it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know, somebody help me, because I'm not the guy. I don't understand that world. And we couldn't get anybody to help us.
Yeah. And your son is slipping through your fingers.
It's done, you know. So I got such a rotten taste, and I already didn't have a lot of respect for organized religion at that time, but that kind of sealed the deal for me. It's like, this is it. Somebody help us, and nobody would. Nobody would, because of liability. That's why.
Yeah.
Which is a word of the world, right? They don't want to be involved, because if something goes bad, they might be held responsible.
Which is strange, because something already has gone bad, and
Yes.
you're kind of already liable or responsible. I don't know.
Did he actually say liability? Did he use
No,
that?
he didn't say that. That's my word.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you know,
but-
when
yeah,
I'm like, why won't any religious organizations do something, and they just wouldn't get involved? It's like, well, you're gutless people. So, anyways, now there's a whole lot of things that could happen, and I won't tell you. We did television interviews. Of course, we had the restraining order. We got.
I remember that.
No, he put a restraining order on you guys.
On me.
Your
personally.
Your
Yeah.
Josh did. Your son did.
After our second trip, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And by the way, it was the day after they got out of jail. The witch and the bitch got out of jail. He put a restraining order on me. So I know what they did. They got out of jail and they said, go put a restraining order
Yeah,
on
he's
my
just
father.
doing what they said. But when you say you got interviewed by people, is this
TV
Knoxville
stations.
News or Tulsa or
We
both?
first got interviewed from Tulsa. Here's another thing I'll tell you that really got to me about the whole thing. I got a call from Darren Carlock from the Tulsa Police Department, and he was like, hey, Detective Carlock from Tulsa Police Department, do you have a son named Josh? I go, yeah. He's like, well, is he involved in this Harmony Worship Center church? Does he go there? And I said, yeah. And he goes, is there anything you can tell me about the church? And I said, yeah, they're a fucking cult. I mean, yeah. And he's like, oh, really? And I'm like, are you saying you didn't know that? And he said, no, I'm not saying I didn't know that. I'm saying you're the first parent that even be willing to talk to me about it. Wow. Like, because some of the other parents, apparently, I found this out, much later, they wouldn't do anything against the church, because then the church would tell their children not to talk to them. So they were letting the kids talk to the parents as long as those parents wouldn't say anything. We even found out later on that some of the parents were donating money in order to continue communication with their kids. It just blows me away. that people
Blackmail.
would do
Man, yeah. Man, that is so fucking illegal. Those people should be put away.
that. Yeah.
So what's kept you from just going down there and beating the shit out of them yourself? Assault charges?
Well, I mean, back then, yeah, I just never wanted to give them anything to hold over me.
Yeah.
I mean, since then, I'm going to tell you the truth. I really believe you do something about something, or you put it in your wake, and
You put it in
the
your
best
way.
revenge is living well. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, especially since you got
anyways.
Josh back.
yeah.
I mean, once you get Josh back, fuck them.
But yeah, so how we got involved is, so we talked to the detective. They were in the news, and a news station called us and said, would you do an interview with us? We understand your son is one of the, So I did that, and then that led to an interview in Knoxville. And then that was one of the only calls I got for many years, is before the interview went up. Josh called me and said, if you go forward with this interview, you'll never talk to me or see me or talk to your grandkids again or anything. I said, well, it's kind of too late now, because.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah. So
it was just like, hey, Josh, I know you're listening. Come back to us, that type of stuff.
Yeah,
in terms of the interview.
Kind of. It was
Beware,
kind of like
parents beware, those kind of things.
Yeah, it was more of that than Josh come back to us. It's more like, look, this is what's happening right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I guess we did it. I don't know, for our own reasons, or to try to get the, again, you're trying to get anything to shine a light on it. I mean, we went and talked to the Attorney General of Tulsa County, and I said, what do you got to do? You got to do something. Of course, in retrospect, there wasn't nothing he could do, right, unless they're breaking the law and this kind of thing. But yeah, I cussed him out too. But and all this stuff happened in 6 or 7 months. And then the second trip out there was Zach, who had been a member of the church, called me at home and said, they're beating people.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Said, I've beaten your son. He said, I've both beaten and been beaten by your son. And so, when I listened to Josh's podcast, he sounded like, and I don't know this for sure, he made it sound like it only happened a handful of times. I think it happened a lot. That's what I think.
Yeah. Well, it's 10 years ago. We need to keep... For our listeners' sake,
sure.
And this was under the direction of the prophet.
Oh, they were in the room.
You beat up those people. You beat up that guy.
Yeah.
And they would.
She initiated Josh's beating by throwing a glass tumbler at his head.
They called it disciplining the flesh.
Yeah.
They had a word for it.
Jesus.
Well, there's scriptures that talk about how God disciplines those he loves, and if you're not being chastised by God, then you're really not a true child of God.
She did all kinds of crazy things. When we talked to Carlock, because we made the detective, the Tulsa detective.
Right.
We actually met with him several times because he was after him. I mean, he was trying to do what he could do.
Yeah.
He told us things like she would throw knives, she would throw objects, she would. I mean, I'll tell you guys the truth. I think there's things that happen that we don't know and probably will never know.
Yeah.
We know part of it. We don't know all of it.
And yet the doors are open on this cult.
I don't know how.
Yeah.
Me either. I mean, that's just criminal. I mean, you don't beat people up. You don't direct somebody to beat people up. You don't.
Well, and that's the part of it where you wonder, like, like we can cognitively understand how these things happen, but I don't think we can we can't connect. Like, why do those people drink that poison? I don't know.
Right? It is crazy.
So is it like First Amendment stuff? Like, well, it's a church, so I can't get involved. Government can't get involved. Is that? Well,
when we talked, because I talked to the Tulsa County Sheriff's Department out there, and they said, look, if your son's over 21, it's kidnapping. You need to understand. You got to stay on the right side of the law, because if you go out there and grab him, it's kidnapping, and you'll go to jail.
Jeez.
Well, I got a wife and another son, and what are you going to jeopardize for that?
Yeah.
So there had to be a period of your life where you kind of even had to maybe emotionally write him off.
Yeah, absolutely, sure.
And then the fact that he came back someday was just...
I can tell you when it happened, when he came to visit us. He came to visit us one time, and we didn't know what it was for. I thought it was a money grab. I thought he wanted money. But he wanted us to write a letter of apology to the church. Yeah.
Well, you got a kid with balls, I'm telling you right
Bless
there.
your heart, man. Bless your heart.
That was one of the maddest, because like the restraining order, like, it's a funny thing as a parent. I had a tendency not to hold him responsible. Like, you got involved in this.
Yeah.
You're.
But now you're in the tractor beam of this psychopath.
Yeah, and so you're trying to understand that, and you're trying to know, and then one thing is that that's not your son. That's not the kid you raised.
Right.
Whatever happened.
Yeah, so you can cut him some slack and not take it so personal.
Yeah, but when he, it's a funny story. So when he came home, he wanted to come home, and we were like, we don't know what this is, but...
You're always welcome.
You're always welcome, but we know this is not a rehabilitation visit. He's after something. You could just tell.
Because he's still the zombie.
Yeah, and I had talked to myself, I come from a long line of bull in the china shop kind of personalities, and one of the things you learn is in a cult, like, I gave them fuel to hate me, and I learned that we were the most hated people in the church, actually. They did those sermons on us, because we did the television interviews and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah, they would talk about you from the pulpit.
Yes.
By name.
Yeah. There was a period of about 2 or 3 years where 5 or 6 people left the church, and they would always call us and talk to us and tell us that. Like, they would say, thanks, and do you know you're the most hated people in the church? So, well, but so I had talked myself out of overreacting, whatever this was for.
Yeah.
And so, he gave the big speech. It was all a big practice thing about this and that and this and that. And then, he came to the... So I want you to write a letter of apology to the church. And I had so convinced myself not to overreact that I didn't. And it's the one time that I wish I would have.
I don't know, man. I think you did well.
I just said, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Yeah. And he asked 2 or 3 times. I said no. So then after that, But an
overreaction would have been what?
Get the fuck out of my living room.
Well, aren't you? Yeah. But I'm glad you didn't say that.
Like I say, it's one thing to take out the restraining order because you didn't have to look at me when you did that.
But to
when
come
you
and
sat
ask
in my
me
living room,
ask me for a letter,
and ask me for a letter.
As if I'm the one doing wrong in
Right.
this scenario.
Right.
It's very insulting, but I think you took the high road,
Well,
man.
yeah, maybe you're probably right, Cass. It's the one time that I didn't say get the fuck out of my living room, and I wish I would have. But so then after that was pretty much it. I got one email one time from him asking for money, and I'm like, what? And then I realized he had sent out a send to all.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And it
It
was
was a form letter.
It was to ask for money because they were building the Harmony Worship Center, Child Care Center, or some bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And so I did a reply to all, and I said, "Hey, don't send them any money. This is a cult, and they
Wow.
tear people, they tear people apart. And please, if you want to send your money to charity, do it to a respectable one, not these people."
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I got a phone call on that. Then I got a phone call the next day.
Speaking of phone calls, have you ever talked personally to Jan,
Not since it all happened. No,
Who's
no.
Jan again?
the prophet,
Oh, the prophet.
pastor's wife?
But you did talk to her once, huh?
Before it all went bad.
right,
yeah,
right.
when we visited the church. I mean, just conversationally.
Yeah, yeah.
What about her husband? He seems to kind of be in the shadows of her.
I almost hold him in bigger contempt than her
Really? Wow.
because, she was the witch, right? But if you had any sense, I mean, he could have stopped it.
Yeah,
if there was
he's
anybody
equally
that could have
accountable, for
known better, it should have been him.
Yeah.
At some point he should have said, "Hey, honey, we're having people beat each other up. We can't do that." And he didn't do that.
Well, imagine that she's got a ring through the nose of every parishioner. Imagine the ring, the size of the ring she's got through his.
Got to be huge, man.
It's probably through his urethra.
It was. So how did it then? I mean, but so good happened eventually.
Eventually.
How did that come about then? What did you just get a call, or did he come visit?
Yeah,
or,
no, I just got a call. I was in Dayton because I'd taken a job for a while as a Fed, working for the Air Force, and so I was in Dayton. My wife was still in Knoxville, and she was going to eventually move up there, and that didn't work out. But yeah, I just got a call, and I answered the phone. I knew it was him because there you go.
Caller ID.
Yeah. And he just said, "Dad, this is Josh," and I said, "Hey." And at this point, I didn't know. It'd probably
You're
been
numb.
2 years.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, kind of. He said, "Dad, this is Josh." I said, what's up? Well,
Well, you don't want to get too hopeful.
I wasn't, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you, as soon as he spoke, I knew it was
Changing
different.
his voice?
It was different. Because it had been 10 years that every time we talked to him, it was stoic. It was either angry, psychotic, or stoic, right?
Yeah.
And then for him to say, "Dad, it's Josh," it was just like, okay, something's changed.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
so. What did
beautiful.
he say? Just you wanted to come and see her or something, or
No?
okay?
Yeah, time out.
All right.
Take a drink.
Yeah.
I'm a little dry. So he said, he just said, we chit-chatted, and he said, "Dad, there's a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of things that have changed." Just give me a minute.
Yeah, sure.
Fuck. I'm a crier, in case you can't tell. It goes both ways. It goes good and bad.
Well,
Well, you
this
love your
is-
son, man.
So he said,
There's no shame in
"I
that.
want back in the family." And I said, "Well, I just got one question. Are you still attending or going to that church?"
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "No."
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay, you don't have to ask back in the family. I mean,
Yeah. You're
part
welcome.
of the family."
Yeah, come on.
So then I think that following weekend, I was driving back and forth between Dayton and Knoxville on the weekends, and he gave me a call. That first call was about 4 or 5 minutes, really. That's all. He said, "I
Yeah,
want back in the family." I said, "Are you still going to that church?" He said, "No, and I'll never go back." I said, "Well, then
Welcome.
we just move forward from here." And so he called me that weekend, and we had about an hour and a half, 2 hour call where he started going back and,
Describing what had happened.
started going back all over that stuff. And I told him, I said, "Look, if you need to do this for you, that's fine. You don't need to do it for me."
But in that sense, you were kind of serving as a therapist,
I think that's something.
letting
you need
him
to do.
unpack it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of unpacking. I can't imagine the guilt that he was carrying.
Oh, sure.
It's very, very complicated because even while he was there, they were using you as the bad guy, and he's sitting there in that pew or in that congregation. They've already shamed him for his own sexuality and humanity. Now his family, his very family, the source from which he came, is the evil scapegoat of this organization. So even more shame. So it's no wonder in a way the psychology of how long it took for him to get out and snap out of it. And I do think you're right, Bob, in that just out of the necessity of current events and shit, we started out this conversation talking about First Amendment and the complexity of being a free society. And the truth is that humans are on the scale of psychopathic and sociopathic. We're all on that spectrum. To where we can do shit that is just cruel and mean and insensitive and heartless and non-empathic and non-compassionate. And this woman is that. And she's literally out for herself and for money and for power. And she's a black hole of needs that'll suck the life out of anybody who gets in her, her tractor beam. Mm-hmm. And she has, in America, freedom of religion and freedom of speech. She's going to do that. And what I think the responsibility lies on us as a people is is to be aware that that shit's out there. Right. And that's all we can do today. That's all we're doing today on this show is just trying to say, hey, there's some crazy shit out there. And
Josh is a smart kid. I mean, he's a smart guy. Sure. When he was here, it struck me as he has doubt. He has the capacity to see right from wrong. I think the Josh
that we met that day has doubt and has skepticism, but it was hard earned.
Oh, sure.
I think he was naive.
Sure. So when he was a younger kid, I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, we've obviously, me and my wife have read dozens of books about cults, and unfortunately, smart doesn't have a lot to do with it, whether somebody's smart or whatever. And I don't know how it happens. How does it? Like I say, it still goes on today. There have been mass murders as a result of cults. I don't know how they start. Did you guys ever watch Breaking Bad? You ever watch it?
Oh yeah,
sure,
great show.
Yeah, if you remember, late in the show, Walter White, the kid asks him, I think, like, how much money can you make, or how much more money do you need? And I don't remember his exact answer, but it paraphrased, he's like, man, stopped being about the money a long time ago, right? Well, I think cults happen that way. They start out as one thing, and then they turn into something else. Like, I don't know that they started out with bad intentions. Did they? I don't know.
That's a great mystery. Even they say about Jim Jones and stuff like that. It's probably started out, and it snowballs into something that's out of everybody's control.
Right.
It's a fucking movie. You know what I mean? Have you ever thought about that, writing the whole thing down? And
yes and no.
Hey, do you want to relive this?
Do you want to?
Yeah.
And let me tell you, there's quite a long period of time where that's what you feel like every morning when you wake up. You feel like, man, I'm in the middle of a fucking horror movie.
It is a horror movie.
I mean, I often wonder if I would have lived there, what would have happened? Because there came a period of time when I realized that I can't go there now. I can't go there. I mean,
because you might do something.
And they might do something. I mean, it's a church full of young, big kids. I mean, I slept with a baseball bat by my bed for a couple of years, just never knowing, because I know that we were their enemies, and I know that they hated us, and
they were violent people.
Yeah, and if
they beat each other up, it would keep them from doing it to somebody else.
Coming to Knoxville and beating you up, you were obviously the enemy.
And if the prophet said, "Go," a prophetess or whoever the fuck she is,
that's right,
said, "Go get that guy," well, maybe that would have happened.
Yeah,
huh?
Yeah.
Jesus, man.
Well, one thing about these, you were saying that it's not about smart. I think when, as humans, we kind of get in our own mind sometimes something that we really wish was true, or something that we really want to believe, and the propensity to be credulous or gullible is set up by those desires and passions. I flipped through my phone. I get USA Today on my phone, and there was this piece. It was a little puff piece or something, but it just said 5 scams that even trip smart people.
Oh, okay.
And one of them is these emails you get where it says, "Oh, your name's Midgley, and there's a deceased person in Africa or Scotland. Actually, Scotland would be more likely for Midgley.
Yeah.
That has died. He has no heirs, and if you'll give us your information, you're prone to get some money out of this.
Your social security number.
Exactly. So obviously that's a scam.
Yeah.
But if I'm knee deep in debt, say, and I need money really bad, I might be more willing and more apt to try something that is obviously stupid, But because of whatever circumstances has set me up to be, I'm a smart guy, but right now I'm less than smart because of circumstances.
Right.
And I think in the area of faith, sometimes...
That's where I was going.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, but the nub, the thing that pushed Josh forward was his faith thing, was his religious thing.
Yeah,
and that's why he got involved, though.
We talk to people on the show, and people leave the faith because they are done with it. Sometimes, though, people leave a certain church because they're not devout enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
And there is this climb, I'm going to find the perfect church. I'm going to find the people that are the most devoted to Jesus, who really have Jesus on their hearts and minds, who really are aligned with Jesus' agenda or whatever. Mm-hmm. And this church is wishy-washy on gays, or this church is wishy-washy on tithing, or whatever front on the doctrinal scale it is. It's like, you guys are soft on sin, and I need and so I'm going to move on. I'm going to find another church. And so for Josh, I think he wanted the best version of Christianity he could find. Maybe, I mean, we're putting thoughts in his head, but what else takes a person to an extreme to where, and then because of love bombing, and then because of the manipulation of things, it's a year sometimes before these cults show their dark side.
Yeah.
And so by then, the tentacles are so intertwined into your hearts and lives, it's hard to leave. And then another year goes by, and now you're putting up with shit that you never would have put up with 2 years ago when you walked in the door.
Yeah.
You walk in right off the street and they say, "Oh, by the way, we're going to have a beating tonight because this is God's will for his people." You wouldn't stay.
Say,
but this, 2 years later, you're invested. Who knows? I'm just speculating.
No, I mean, it makes sense. But, Wow.
Well, let's come into to the close here. We, you and your wife, both your sons are out of the house. You're empty nesters, and they're out doing their own things. What do you and your wife do? You kind of said you're semi-retired, but you're still active in certain things. What does she do?
She works. She's a software developer and teacher for her company. She works for Hanger Prosthetics.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah, she travels a lot.
Prosthetics as in limbs?
Yeah,
limbs.
Yep.
Wow.
And so she works on their billing software and teaches
her.
that stuff. So,
that's excellent.
And you're also kind of software-y, right? Or what?
I'm an instructional developer is what I'd call myself, but primarily distance learning and stuff. I don't actually do the coding. I just tell people to do it.
Yeah.
More of a teacher. You do some teaching, I would think.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, I
do
get that.
they travel you around to teach?
I don't travel. No, I don't.
You just do it all right there.
I just develop things. Yeah, we have developers and graphic designers and stuff like that. So
I had a daughter went to UT. She loves Knoxville. You like Knoxville?
Yeah, well, it's a lot like my hometown, except it's not my hometown. So
in the South,
Akron. It's kind of it's not a big town.
Right.
Like we have little bitty traffic jams and people complain about them, and you think, man, if you lived in Atlanta or Nashville, there's nothing, right? But it's big enough to have some stuff, but small enough to still
Akron,
I like
Ohio.
Knoxville.
There's some steep hills in that town.
Plus, there is. Yeah. Plus, I ride a Harley. We ride a lot. And
dude, you are totally out. You're just totally the dude.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, you really are. You've got that dude look too. So I like that.
And so if you're a motorcycle rider, there's few better places than East Tennessee, man. It's a nice place to ride a motorcycle.
Yeah.
So.
Speaking of Akron, I used to work at. Are you ready?
Sure.
Dependable WHLO Hello Radio. I was the real Bob James at Hello Radio in Akron back in the 70s.
Yeah, that was like AM 640 or
640. That's right.
Hey, see there?
That's right. 640. Yeah, 60. The big 64.
WHLO, yeah.
One time, the station of the year because it was 1964, so they called it the station of the year. Yeah, WHLO, Akron, Ohio, which is now a big Jesus station.
Is it?
Oh, is it Christian preachers and stuff?
Yeah, nobody listens to AM radio anymore. That's why. So
it is fun. I mean, it's sad and fun to scroll around those stations and listen to preachers rant every now and then.
Oh, man.
It's just a little too close to home for me.
Yeah. Isn't that something? Akron,
so what do you and your wife do for fun?
Scuba dive and Harley ride.
Okay, does she have one, or she just get on the back?
No, she just gets on the back of mine.
Yeah, babe.
She's talked about getting one, but I said by the time you got one small enough that it would be probably suitable for you, if you're on the back of one for 6 or 8 hours, you got to you got to be comfortable, especially when you get older.
Yeah, well, that's for sure.
So,
Did you go up to North Dakota for the big thing in North Dakota?
No, I've never done that. Now, Susan's dad has.
Sturgis, yeah.
Susan's
Sturgis.
dad used to do that.
Yeah.
He was a big biker.
Yeah. My
So
brother-in-law
she comes from
does
biker
that.
family.
Well, her dad was a big biker. My dad was a big biker, but my dad was the most white bread guy you'd ever want to meet. But he loved riding motorcycles. That's
On
how
the
I got
weekend.
my start.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
He was,
that's
he was a
great.
big motorcycle guy.
Yeah.
And I used to ride on his when I was a kid, on the back of his.
Yeah, my brother-in-law, same way.
Yeah.
Loves the Harleys.
So what kind of defensive driving do you do? I mean, that's obviously
A lot.
dangerous. You
Yeah,
really,
you gotta
really
be very careful,
You better.
man.
I try to maintain. I'll tell you, man, you'll get me started. The look, there's a
what I
couple
do.
there's a couple things that are pressure points, right?
Yeah.
Nearly 80% of motorcycle accidents involve excessive speed and alcohol. So don't go too fast and don't drink. And then the other thing is intersections. I mean, that sounds obvious to say it, but
Yeah.
you just have to. People making left turns in front of you, stay out of blind spots. I try to keep a lot of clear distance if possible. Now, of course, you always got people coming in.
Yeah.
But these days, I don't do a lot of city driving. I live on the edge of town, and so I got about 5 minutes, and I'm on 2-lane blacktop. So
Good.
Yeah.
More fun.
but you have to be careful. Somebody comes out. It happened to me just the other day. Somebody comes out, and so you're going down the highway, and then they do that thing where they just let it roll for a foot or two and then stop again. If you're on a motorcycle, you don't know if they're coming out or if they're stopping.
wait, they're trying to enter the highway. You're
Yeah.
approaching them. They're sitting at
Yeah.
a stop sign, and they
And
kind
it's
of
like-
roll a
And
little
it-
bit, and you're not sure whether they see you or not.
Right,
you know?
right. You think because
boy.
you're making eye contact, right? You make sure, but then so you got to jam them on until you know. But yeah, anyways.
So you do that. How about movies and stuff? Netflix, those kind of things. You do any of that
Yeah,
stuff?
I am a big movie guy. I haven't gotten out. I like to go
Well,
to
they
the theater.
suck
I
right
haven't gotten
now.
out. Yeah.
Nothing's good right now.
Right.
But, and they're having a shitty month too. No,
Well, as far as
big
like,
Hollywood, I mean.
like Game of Thrones, you mentioned Walter White. I mean, you watch that series.
Love that. I'm not a Game of Thrones guy. I guess.
me
Are
either.
you? No.
Nah.
No.
I am.
You know, one of the
I don't like all that dragons and shit. That
funny
bullshit.
you bring this up. This will be kind of funny. I don't know if you guys watch this or not, but have you ever seen Preacher?
Yeah.
I have
I've seen
a
it.
couple of it. You'd like that one?
I like that show. I mean, it's got an Irish vampire in it. How much better can you get than that?
That's true. When you got your vampires, you're doing good.
I don't think I've watched enough to really get into it. You know, I think this thing that Bob, you mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, and I have since gotten into it, and it's called Ozarks. And
Oh yeah, good show.
I think it's Breaking Bad Part 2. I mean, because basically what it is, the thing with Walter White is he's this innocent, naive family man,
Right.
high school chemistry teacher,
Yeah.
and he finds himself in the underworld of drugs, etc. Well, this is what's his name? The guy from Ozarks.
Bateman.
Yeah, Jason Bateman
Yeah.
is just a financial advisor, and he finds himself in drug laundering, money
laundering,
schemes,
cartel, drugs.
and just I think what we enjoy about Walter White and this character with Jason Bateman is just the regular guy, the naivete, and yet he finds himself in really high stakes situations.
Right.
And so we can place ourselves, vicariously proxy into that and then watch him come out alive.
Yeah,
and then,
deal with it. Yeah, exactly.
and succeed, and it's like we can somehow relate to that because they're just normal, normal guys.
The anti-hero.
The anti-hero, yeah.
And Walter White was, he was a teacher, and he didn't have a lot of money, and he was dying of cancer.
And he had medical
And he
bills.
Had been medical bills. He had a son that's multiple sclerosis or something, and he just wanted to provide for his family. So he's just going to make a little bit of money and leave it to his kids, but then he gets sucked.
This
into
is so Ozarks is similar trajectory. I
I've
think.
heard some things about that. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
It's good. It really is. It grabs you right off. First episode. Yeah.
So
Really
what
good.
is your? I always ask our guests, what's your opiate of choice? And this is, I think about it. It's really kind of we're in the middle as a country of an opioid epidemic.
We are.
So it's not funny. And here I am saying, what's your opiate of choice? And I just was sensitive to that this week because I kind of need to.
Yeah.
But
I know what you mean.
that said, I think most people do know what I mean. But I just wanted to say I'm not completely insensitive.
How do you take
to-
the edge off? In the ashtray, in the drink,
I
or whatever.
don't smoke. I quit smoking in '99, cigarettes, and never looked back.
Okay.
Never looked back. I'm a vodka guy. That's
Oh yeah.
I'm a big
Oh,
vodka
that's
drinker.
good stuff.
So.
Good stuff.
What's your wife drink?
She's a wine drinker.
Yeah. So that's the same with me. My wife's a wine drinker, and I'm a gin and tonic guy. Today's vodka tonic because I'm out of gin.
Oh, okay.
Mine is what you got. Yeah, I'll drink it.
We got for free, huh?
Have you ever had this, the bourbon or the whiskey that's kind of sweetened by honey, like honey jack?
That's good. A Tennessee honey.
Tennessee honey.
Yeah.
Tennessee honey. Is that what they
Yeah,
call
I
it?
like
That's
that.
good. Yeah.
So Bob likes that with his pipe.
Is that
Yes,
right?
I'll drink a
That
little
is
of
some
that.
good stuff. We did the. I call them Susan's cousins. I've known so long; they're like my own. The last 2 years we did almost the whole bourbon trail as a thing during the summer.
Yeah,
going
up in Kentucky?
Yeah,
that's great.
that's a
We
lot
did
of
that.
fun.
We did that one
On your
Christmas,
bikes?
I think.
The last time I went up there, I rode my bike. Yeah, they're not bikers. But
I mean, there's a shitload of bourbon places up there too.
no
So
kidding.
I think we only had about 4 of them, and they let you taste it. So
yeah.
4 is about enough.
Are you,
I suppose.
by chance, like the rock band Rush,
yeah,
Neil Peart? You know his story?
no, I don't
He
think
lost
so.
his wife and children, and to somehow I don't even
Yeah.
remember, but they died prematurely, and he was alone. He got on his Harley, and he was a Canadian, and he rode the entire West Coast all the way down to Mexico,
Wow.
and quit the band for a season and just introspected.
No, I didn't
and
know that.
Yeah, it was a journey, but anyway, just the fact that sometimes it's good, it's therapeutic to get on the bike and ride.
It is very much so. We're
When you were in the middle of like the limbo with Josh,
Yeah.
did you go to the bike for therapy?
You know what? Actually, I didn't have one then because
Okay.
we had been overseas, and so I'd gotten rid of my bike, and we had not been back that long, and so I hadn't gotten back into it yet. Yeah.
I don't know how you did
But
it.
if you guys know the Blue Ridge Parkway, I'm going to be on it
yeah.
next Friday and Saturday. Man, that's
Virginia, right?
You've done it before.
It starts in Carolina, it goes all the way up to Virginia.
Yeah.
Oh, do it. This weekend, I'll be on it for 2 days. It'll be my 3rd trip this year. Yeah.
It is beautiful.
and
up
it's
there.
good every time.
It's 463 miles of 2-lane blacktop without a stop sign or a street light. I mean, you can't get much better.
Wow.
Motorcycle. It starts in Waynesboro, Virginia, and it ends in Cherokee, North Carolina. And I think it's 4-something. It's 460, 450. Something
Without a stoplight or a stop sign.
It's curvy, though.
and
it's
no
curvy.
commercial signs anywhere on the.
Yeah,
so
it's just beautiful.
You
No
have
billboards.
No
No,
billboards.
no.
You have to know. Now, and it's very limited access too. So when you have to know where you're going to have to get off to get gas because there's no like gas 1 mile, no nothing. It's just beautiful.
Oh,
Yeah.
you really have to know it. You get stuck.
You can get a
A lot of
guide,
bikes
yeah.
on there. You see other bikers.
Lot.
Now you do this thing where you put your hand down and wave.
Yes. Yes.
It's a fraternity.
Well, yeah, I got a buddy that I ride with all the time, and he refuses. He goes, "I'm not waving at anybody." I'm like, "Look, man, just try it once. It feels good. It's just like, hey, it's your buddy. Hey, it's the other weekend white guy that's out riding his bike, right? Just just be a part of it."
Join the fraternity.
group.
Right.
Well, thanks so much for making the trip down here. We love live guests compared to
Great.
Skype. This
Yeah.
has been really special and
Yeah.
good to meet you. I'm
What a
honored
story.
to meet you.
What a story, man.
Well, it's I appreciate. I talked myself into this and out of it about a dozen times.
Coming
But,
on?
yeah. Because why? Why
I think-
do I want to go back over that stuff? But for one thing, I'm a podcaster, so I was just interested in doing it for you guys. So.
Well, and we our listeners are people that are either in the midst of or thinking about or on the outside of deconverting and chunking and rejecting irrational thought and supernatural beliefs. And I think this testimony is an encouragement to people who are like, wait a second, it's gullibility and credulous and the need for something to be true that kind of set a trap for this family. And they're better and they're recovering and they're back together and they're in love and they're experiencing life anew. But boy, wouldn't it be great for that to have never happened?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if people can avoid that, then it's worth it.
Yeah.
I'll just two more things I'll tell you.
Sure.
Because it's a funny thing. When I listened to the episode that Josh was on,
Mm-hmm.
just like 2 or 3 weeks before that, I had been telling Josh and my wife and my other son, I said, man, there's this book you have to read. It's the book that I never wrote, right? If I wrote a book, it would be The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Me too.
And you mentioned it on that.
The Subtle Art of Not Giving a
So
Fuck.
we're philosophically aligned.
I believe so. Yeah. And the other thing is the other thing you talked about in your podcast that I'm a firm believer in is this everything happens for a reason. I'm really a non-believer in that as well. So yeah.
Yes.
It's chaos. Man.
Hate that.
It's coincidence. And that's why there's that word, coincidence,
One of the things I say is, look, even if it happens for a reason, right? Even if you get hit by a bus because your son's going to give birth to the next Hitler and you don't know the reason, what difference does it make? Absolutely none.
So true. Even if it is for a reason, don't tell yourself.
People say that as a
because you'll
salve.
start to believe your own press.
Yeah.
Or you have such a need to be special that this parking place happened to me, because the universe is for me. And I think it appeals to the lower angels of our nature. Just ride the random wave of life that we're on, and don't get so prone to tell yourself that you're so special that this park,
I'll tell you when I really turned against that is when we went through this, because people would say that to you. People would say that to me.
Oh, it's your fault.
Well, no, they would say, it happens,
it's happening for a reason.
Oh,
everything happens for a reason. I go, what could the fucking possible reason be?
That my
And besides,
son...
whatever reason it is, it sucks. If you want to know my...
That's a horrible
just
thing
a
to say.
stupid
It
thing.
really is an answer.
Very insulting.
Because people don't know anything else to say, I think.
Then shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
Silence,
I'm with
man.
you.
There's nothing
I'm
wrong
with
with
you.
silence when somebody's in trouble and
Right.
mourning. Just be by their side. Don't blow smoke up their ass. I love it. Well, thanks, Tony, for coming on.
Thanks for
Yeah,
having me,
Tony,
guys.
it was great, man.
Appreciate it.
So that's our talk with Tony Hupp, and a great talk it was, and a great guy. We loved it. He has a podcast called Unfiltered and Unfettered, and there's a link to it in the show notes. There's also a link to Paul Thorn's You Might Be Wrong YouTube. So before I play the regular post-commentary with Bob and I feel that I owe it to you, the listener, to warn you that I was in a rambling mood that day. I believe conversation is an art form. Well, what follows is 35 minutes of what I'll generously call abstract art. Like those paintings that seem to make no sense or have no cohesion. I love the Fred Armison character that used to be on SNL's Weekend Update called Nicholas Fehn, where he would read headlines and then try to comment, and it would make no sense and he would just end up rambling. Well, I'm going to play a little clip of that.
New York Times, the great New York Times, tweak in rule to ease a path to green card. Now, this is exactly the moment that if I were to take a poll, and I don't mean any poll, I don't mean the kind of poll, I would never be the first person, I don't think anyone, as long as any poll taker, if I were to take, I had met an infant, and super nice, and even if every citizen decided to, spray paint Charlie Chaplin's name on every high school, or do a caricature, or however tactile, listen, I would be the first, I would be the second. I don't think in any line of people, look, society, before we even launch into that, absolutely, across the board, petroleum.
All right, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm worried. Here's what I'm worried about: that this isn't going anywhere.
Seth,
that's what I'm worried about.
I don't know what I have to bring. The problem with you, and I don't mean anything personal, with your personality, and I love you, and this is not a criticism by any means. This is not even a statement. It doesn't even will never come across as anything. Hang on. Sarcastic or ironic or even any kind of statement against you, even in the lightest part of day, you, Seth, and we all agree, and we all agree. I know we all agree on this. The problem with, hear me out, with your personality in any situation, in any given situation, and as great as you are, Seth, I salute you and bow down. I will detail your car, and no matter how much. And how pleasant and how much you try, and I know that you try, and I know that you do your very best, and we see even behind that you think before any of that even comes to fruition. And I'm not. Listen, man, there's no way if you sat with me anywhere.
All right, enough. Nicholas Fehn, everybody.
Thank you.
again. Thank you. You judged me again. Thank you.
I suspect that Fred had guys like me in mind when he wrote that satire, and I'm owning it. In the process of trying to trim down this post-show commentary, I just couldn't do it. And so fair warning, if you don't like my ramblings, please do us both a favor and shut off the show now. Tony Hupp?
The dude.
He does look like Jeff Bridges, really.
The dude abides. Yeah, no, what a story, too.
And a happy ending, I guess we can say for sure that it's turned out well, but that...
I think I would see it as a happy ending. As I said earlier, too, I mean, to hear the story told, the same story told from a different perspective. Yeah, very interesting.
And there were things that, he noticed that Josh never did, which is like the fact that there was no black men in the cult and there was no white women in the cult. Except for one, and they were the first to leave, he later said.
Right, and on the porch when we were talking, too, it's like, well, the prophetess was black and her husband was white, so maybe they were making these people in their own image, or something.
Well, they made God in their own image,
for sure.
So they're in the habit of making, projecting things. I don't know. It's
a strange story.
Well, we're strange creatures.
We are.
The psychology of humans, I mean, we're seeing like some real manifestations of how weird it can get. This is the worst. I think about, here's a case where right now there are people praying for me to come back and that they are brokenhearted that I am outside of religion.
Because you're going to fry in hell.
Yeah, a lot of things. And, Tony is like, I've lost my son.
Right.
And he wants him back. And I know that my mom could almost say the same thing about me.
Oh, I see.
Except she's in the cult, and I'm out.
Yeah.
And as we've said many times, it's much ado about nothing.
Yeah.
And I understand the meaning-making drive that we have as humans, but the creation of religion, the creation of master narratives, the creation of God and these big deals that are something bigger than ourselves, that it somehow meets a need in our psyche to be a part of something bigger, that we're so averse and so estranged or so offended by the meaninglessness of an absurd existence that's godless and just accidental shit happening and science unfolding and nobody watching the shop or running the levers. And so we're so scared of that we create these master narratives. This is always what's coming out of your mouth. How much we complicate things.
Oh, much more complicated. Life is enough complicated.
Life is complicated enough.
You don't need another one.
And it all has to do with how seriously one grabs on to their master narrative and just insists that it's true to the point where they have to negate or deny the reality of this is your mother and father. And he's like, no, you're no longer my mother and father. I mean, we latch on to these things. Anyway, it's just so much.
Hey, I hear you.
Shake my head. We're not the better people that we could be if we just got honest and maybe even courageous about reality. I don't know.
I hear you. No, I agree 100%.
Well, you're always dumbfounded by
it is a little strange.
Needless pain.
Needless pain. Yeah, it really is. And what do? You can't. You do a show like this, I suppose, but you can't. I mean, they have to come to the realization themselves,
Yeah.
And it takes a while. And I think that's why shows like this are important, because you can hear the story and you can see yourself in the story.
Yeah. What do you say to people, like, say, Christians their Christianity is so progressive, so healthy, so adopted to science and reality or whatever, that there's just a little bit of Jesus or whatever. They, too, would be totally against this cult that Josh got into. They were like, that's bullshit. That's wrong. And that's not at all my Jesus.
Right. Right.
And yet, by even holding on to your Jesus, quote unquote, you're kind of propagating this thing that
Then you got David Silverman, who's so anti-religion. He's just off the chart angry at you if you even countenance it.
We say that, but his wife is religious. Like he's more tolerant than sometimes we portray him on this show.
All right. But based on his work, on his books and stuff.
You're right. There is an argument out there that David is probably a proponent of, and that says that you keep the more extreme versions of Christianity alive by keeping any version of Christianity alive.
Right.
And that you're part of the problem. And the sooner that
wake up and get out of it. Yeah.
That we don't embrace anything for which there is no evidence.
Right.
The sooner that we're going to protect ourselves from these narratives that cause such rifts in relationships.
Yes. Yeah. But of course because of that, because he's so way over on the other side, there's great pushback.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I hope his message is getting through, but I wonder, if you, I think maybe being in the soft center where we are, and not all the time, but most of the time, well, like you do, you say, well, I embrace some of the stuff that Christians do. I mean, helping people, that's great. That's great that they're doing that.
Even as we speak, my wife is at the showing of a movie. I forget what it's called. Do you remember what she called it?
Myanmar?
Well, it's about these Myanmar refugees.
Yeah.
And whereas a lot of conservatives and Christians are anti-refugee, they're the ones, saying, turn people away at the border.
Right.
The opposite of the Statue of Liberty poem.
Yeah, and the stuff that says the least of these you welcome in.
Let them suffer the little children to come unto me. I mean, there are some churches and Christianities out there that are opening their doors, and instead of channeling their money into bigger salaries for the pastors and staff
churches.
And bigger buildings, they're actually doing things to make the world a better place.
How could you be against that?
Yeah, we can't be against that. And I've often referred to Hitchens' argument that he's like, well, you show me a good deed done in the name of Jesus that couldn't be done in the name of humanism.
Yeah.
But humanism is not as organized. I think I've come to terms with the fact that I'm a community organizer.
Yeah.
I think I've come to terms with that is something that I do, and it comes natural for me as far as bring people together, network people, orchestrate communities to where people that were normally or otherwise not associated or acquainted, they now are, and that's a result of this show. It's a result of things that I've done my whole life. Even when I was a pastor, I was bringing people together. There would be times, and there is to this day, and even including this evening, we're having a meeting tonight where a lot of people are going to get together. A lot of wonderful, beautiful friendships have been built. And I don't ever think about this as far as narcissism, but if you were to zero in on what's the common denominator, it's me.
Yeah.
And this is what I do. And I think that what is missing from the atheist movement or from the secular ability to do good things. Now, that said, Red Cross is a secular organization. So, I mean, it's not like nobody's ever done this in the name of non-religion. There are, but the point being is that it took some intentionality. We don't collect tithes from atheists, there's no money. And yet here's this organization in America that is a juggernaut of power.
Red Cross.
No, I'm talking the church.
Oh, the church. Oh, I see where you're
every
going.
Sunday morning, these giant fucking multi-million-dollar buildings are full of people, of which 10% of their income is going to the church. And there's just so much potential. And this is what conservatives say all the time. They're like, well, I don't want my taxes to go to helping people. I'll give, I'll give from charity. Well, charity's never going to tackle the problem of...
It's a little too big for that.
It's a little, too big for
very
that.
Big. Yeah.
But anyway, this just that when and if, like you said, churches do something good, we're quick to acknowledge that, hey, at least you're using this false narrative that you've all embraced. It ends up helping the world. Then I'm going to acknowledge that. And as much as I could say, like Hitch, there's nothing that you're doing that we couldn't do in the name of secularism. We just don't have the organization. We just don't have the pooling of money every week. We don't have the resources. We don't have people. And we don't have the guilt.
That's true.
We don't have it. We can't hold that over people to where it's like, give your money every week because God requires it. Some kind of impetus or, compulsion. Yeah. We don't have that as secularists and as naturalists or non-supernaturalists.
May be able to build a case, though, and say, that old notion about, planting seeds under whose tree, or planting trees under whose leaves you don't expect to sit, or something like that. Yeah. Where you do it because it's the right thing to do for the future.
You're not going to benefit from the shade of that tree, and yet you helped plant it.
Right, exactly. So you do it not for you, but for future generations, because that's how much love you have in your heart for these people that you'll never meet and never know, and blah, blah, blah. That type of stuff. I can get into that. I understand. I think that's why I got into teaching. Because, you plant seeds, and you hope that, and they're good seeds, I think.
And you're investing in future generations. Yeah. You're making an impact that's going to outlive you.
Yeah, yeah.
And that feels good.
Yeah, I think so. So
it's the right thing to do.
I think so. Yeah.
So, in a fantasy, if I might, for a moment.
Yes.
Let's say 100 years from now, humans have evolved to the point where we have less and less false narratives. Okay. And master narratives and mythologies now mythology, those are good things because you can find truth from myth, but I'm talking about the kind where we take them serious. We're literalists about our myths. But we've eliminated most of those, and then there is a desire in my heart for us to help give atheism a better reputation.
Yeah.
And show that we can do this too, that we care too, your whole essay on good without God, why do we even feel the need to say that if it wasn't a question on the minds of the culture? The culture doubts that we have a moral basis without the Bible. And obviously that's stupid, but yet we still have to address it because it's a big misnomer out there in the culture. But if we were organized to the point where we were doing great things, I don't know how we got off on this.
Yeah, well, still interesting to a degree.
But then you have a cult like the one that Josh was in, who knows what their agenda is, but they're insular. They're the opposite of impacting the culture in a positive way. They're just literally draining the culture.
Yeah, yeah.
And wow. I think that's probably more churches than we think.
Yeah, so it does. I think it goes back to education, and it seems like everything does, doesn't it? Where you have to be taught to think critically,
and correctly,
and say, well, does that make sense? That doesn't seem to.
Or is that true?
Is that true? Does that make sense? And is there a way to find out? And usually a systematic scientific way is a tested, true way to find out.
Speaking of that, we had Gleb Sierpinski on the show.
Right. The truth guy.
The truth guy. Mm-hmm. Recently, there's been some controversy about him doing something. Using
copyrighted material or something. I can't remember.
And just about the time that we're... Well, there's more and more controversy around, and I don't know. Humans are humans.
They're going to make mistakes.
I think the biggest difference is, there's a difference even in our legal system, involuntary manslaughter and murder, in that you accidentally ran over that person with your car.
Right. You didn't intend
as opposed to... what is it when you...
premeditated.
Premeditated.
Yeah.
Like right. you timed your car.
Exactly.
You knew when they were going to be crossing the street.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just think there has to be... There's a difference between somebody being human, which is flawed.
Right.
And prone to error and malicious intent. Yeah. And I don't know in Gleb's case or anything else how naive things were done.
If he's naive and did something, because of naivete, and he says he's sorry and he does whatever.
Whatever owning it is a big deal.
Yeah, whatever you got to do to fix it, you've done all you can do. What more can you do? So
I think the opposite is when somebody gets defensive. Number one, of something as opposed to owning it. That'd be one. Well, often what happens is, and this is kind of Trumpian.
That's what I was thinking too.
Is that you play the victim.
Play the victim, blame somebody else. Yeah.
Is that poor me, I'm being attacked.
Yeah.
But from something that you did wrong.
Yeah.
If day one you would have just said, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah, I misspoke.
I misspoke, or I'm sorry I did that. I'm sorry I said that.
Right.
I'm going to make it right. And
I think people would buy into that a lot more than
it's not
I never
buying.
said that.
It's actually now you can literally acknowledge. Okay, thank you. You did the right thing.
Right, exactly, and you can live with yourself too. But to keep constantly saying I never said that when we've heard you say it, I mean, come on, that's enough.
It's not a path to healing.
No.
It's almost like a pathological liar. Every time that you tell a lie, and then you tell a lie on top of that lie, and your life becomes just layers and layers of lies.
And you can't keep track of them. And I think, well, this is just me talking, but in Trump's case, he can't keep track of all the lies.
No.
So fuck it, he just doesn't even worry about it. He just keeps going. And off it goes, and blame the media. Blame Mitch McConnell, blame whoever you want, but not me. Not me.
Well, and this is the problem with magical thinking. This is the problem with supernatural thinking. I mean, we think it's like, humans are just being humans or whatever. But what I think is important, and I've said it many times on the show, is just please join us. Join the human race. Join reality. And the truth is that we are flawed. We are fallible. We're going to make mistakes. And if you have some kind of fantasy, and in Trump's case, that he's above that or whatever fucking lies you're telling yourself, and whether it's a religious lie that Jesus died for your sins, stop telling ourselves lies. The sooner that we get honest, I'm just saying it's easy as that.
Yeah.
And own up. Maybe at first you're going to have to eat some humble pie. At first you're going to have to own up and say, it's just going to look bad, but I actually intended, say Gleb Sapersky or anybody else who's kind of caught. I figured out a way to make money on the fly, or what is it, on the land. What is the word for under the surface? Anyway,
sub rosa? I don't know.
I manipulated people, and that's embarrassing to me now. Mm-hmm. Do you know how quick the general public would respond to humility? They're like, "Oh, dude,
don't worry." Me too.
We too. There's that. There is the majority of the public would embrace your humility and embrace you back into the fold and say, "Yeah, we've all done that. Now let's make it right." But we're going to move on from here and remain friends.
Yeah.
Then there's a group of the public that wants to just tar and feather that motherfucker. And you know what? I think they're just as malicious as the guy who deserves tar and feathering. I mean, there's somewhere in here we have to own our own humility and fallibility, because judgment is only afforded to those that think they're superior. And stop it.
Yeah, I wish we can just call up,
the world and say
stop that, and they go, okay, yeah, I guess I will. That's the hard part.
Yeah,
because it's wrapped in ego. It's wrapped in.
Well, we're right back to what we're saying is that you're fallible as a human being,
right?
But admit that and have some kind of self-awareness that you're going to have a propensity to both manipulate others for your self-gain, and you're going to have the propensity to judge that person strictly and harshly when they're caught. And I'm just saying that somewhere in there, we're all the same person. And there's just no place for superiority.
No.
And I don't know if this is what the founders meant when they said all men are created equal, because that Trump came out in the debates and said that's not true.
Right.
Which is a part of the dog whistle for his elitists and for the white supremacists and stuff.
Yeah.
But the reason that it even gets past first base with our intellect is that there is a way in which that is true, and the fact that we're not all created equal.
Yeah, it's again, we go back to that white screen that you can project upon it anything you want it to mean, but the notion that we are all, equal if we have a structure under law, and we all have a right to live and to live the way we want and those kind of things, Yeah.
I think it's important for us to ask ourselves, in what context is that statement true? Because there is one in which it's true, and there's a bunch in which it's not. So, for example, you and I have different IQs. We have different strengths in our arms. We have different sense of humors. We have different interests. We are not equal on 1,000 fronts. In fact, we're no two humans are.
Yeah.
So there's a 1,000 contexts in which the phrase "all men are created equal" is not true. But let's find the one in which it is true.
Right. And build a culture around it.
There.
So, and that's what I think that's what the founders tried to do.
Yeah.
Rather than saying the king or the queen, they are connected to God in some way. And no, it's no. We call our dogs king and queenie now. That it's the power, in quotes, in this country anyway, theoretically, flows from the people. We are the sovereign.
Yeah.
We are the ones that are supposed to be in control. But of course, there's reality. Then, of course,
here's a context in which that phrase is true. All men are created equal. We all need oxygen.
Yeah.
We all breathe in and breathe out.
We need to eat. Absolutely.
We need to eat.
Yeah.
We need community or friendships. We enjoy expressing ourselves.
Yes.
In whatever form that might manifest would be different. But the desire to be heard and to hear and be engaging.
Exactly. We are all created equal. Yes.
These are the places where that sentence is true.
In the important things.
I do think so.
Yeah,
I think that is the high road. And that is, if you can crawl into that, and by that I mean the perspective, the paradigm of here's where we're all equal. And you say it all the time. When I see you, I see me. The interconnected web of all things. If we can put ourselves in that ideology, see the world through that lens, and then go therefore thereby live, that would prevent a million pitfalls. The pitfall of falling into wanting to take advantage of your neighbor. You're going to avoid that if you see yourself connected.
Yeah.
The pitfall of wanting to judge the guy who took advantage of his neighbor. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure.
Is you find yourself on both ends. You can be the judge of assholes, or you can be the asshole, and you can avoid both those pitfalls simply by embracing this worldview that says we're all equal, and that we're all doing the best we can with what we've got. This life is hard. None of us has to be asked to be here.
True.
And so can we figure out a way to, if we have to, lock arms, grab each other's hands, move forward, and then when somebody in that Red Rover line of handheld and arm-locked people does something stupid, we somehow are restorative. Restorative justice. And we don't resort to the opposite evil, and that is to demonize them. I don't know.
Well, it makes sense to me.
I'm a big picture guy, and I just I think about these things, and it's, and then
it's enough to get you down. And I keep reminding myself it's all illusion. I have to say everything's illusion.
We're in the Matrix.
We're in the Matrix. It's illusion. Because at night when I'm down and had a whole day, I can think of all
Trump news or
whatever. News in general, right? Yeah, I have a tendency to think, oh man, things are just, I don't know if we're
fucked.
I don't know how we're going to get out of this one.
Doom and gloom and hopelessness.
Yeah, then the next day, it's a little bit better.
And get up and do it again.
Yeah. So, speaking of doing it again, shall we do another one next week?
I'm not going to let you off the hook that easy.
All right.
Because I have to talk about Sisyphus and what you just said. Because we talk about
pushing the ball up the hill.
And the Nietzschean and the Camus advice is that, Nietzsche even used this thing called eternal recurrence. And it's a really weird concept, but it's just, if you could get to a place where you could say yes to doing the same thing over and over again, and actually want to, then you've hit pay dirt as far as an ideology by which to live. And that is I think that you're onto something by occasionally telling yourself it's an illusion. I don't think that that's an escapism that, I think it could go too far.
Yeah.
But as long as you're not a psychopath, which is they're the ones outside of reality.
Because I think also, not only the bad stuff is illusion, but the good stuff is illusion too. You have to, I just happen to feel good right now. And maybe.
But that's not real.
But maybe that's not real, right? And maybe when I feel bad, that's not real either. So just, go with it.
It might be real, but it is not sustainable.
Not sustainable.
But neither
right.
is the negative.
Yeah, exactly.
This too shall pass. And you can say that about both.
Yeah, exactly.
These are all I'm just looking for tools. Honestly, I know this is, not everybody feels this way, but I see two options every day, live or die. Mm-hmm. Kill myself or live. And it's just that black and white for me sometimes. Now, not consciously.
Yeah, sure.
But I am looking for ways to make this the best it can be, in all honesty.
Yeah. I think you see that and hear that in people when they say, what are you going to do? Exactly. What are you going to do? Live or die? What are you going to do?
And ironically, I think that there's wisdom in kind of the retirement of that, like the resignation, and somebody who's like a carpe diem skydiver, climb this rock one day, scuba dive the next. This, I don't see that as sustainable either, and that type of carpe diem mindset would be critical of settling for mediocrity. But I do think that there's great wisdom in acknowledging that, really kind of life at its best is mediocre. And that's more honest.
Yeah. It's boring, I think. I mean, there's a lot of boredom involved in it, which is, I think, why we read books and go see movies and watch TV, because what are you going to do? You're not farming. I mean, you know what I mean?
It's like you say, go have breakfast.
Yeah.
Do something.
Yeah.
But I used to, I'm a cusser my whole life. Even when I was a Christian, I had no conscience I didn't think God gave a damn about the word damn. And so I would cuss around my kids all the time. But I would forbade the word boring.
Mm-hmm. Because kids say that.
They would say, I'm bored. And I would say, we don't say that word in our house. It was, they might have, in some other houses it'd be fuck or something.
Yeah, we don't say, that's good. We don't say bored in our house.
Yeah, because it's like find something to do. However, in hindsight, looking back at that, I think that was a little bit of denial on my part. That I wanted to deny the banality of life. And now I'm saying I embrace it more. Now, if I were still raising kids, I would not want them to necessarily just say I'm bored and then give up. I would ask them to find a crayon and go create something, probably, or something. But not in a restless way. I think my biggest aversion right now, what I hate most as far as a mindset that I see people adopting, is restlessness. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of wisdom in finding rest in the truth. And the reason
good point.
And I think this plays into what I'm talking about, that if you are on a mission to get rich, then you're going to be maybe motivated to do things that are dishonest. And if you were more at rest with and say yes to what is, then you would be less propelled to become a criminal. The opposite is that when you see people that are restless and are fucking up, then you're going to be less compelled to demonize them or to put yourself on a platform and point down at them and wag your finger at them. If you are at rest and you acknowledge that, there's a human being human.
Yeah.
And you don't get all up in, your panties in a wad about every time that you see somebody being a dick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So stop being a dick and stop judging dicks and just be. Join the human race, calm the fuck down, say yes to what is, and acknowledge that life is rolling a rock up a hill and doing it again the next day. I don't know how much of this will keep.
Well, it's an interesting discussion.
Maybe.
Very interesting thinking. I enjoy watching you work it out with a pencil, as they say.
Well, our thanks to Tony. Drove all the way from Knoxville and back just to talk to us live. And I think it's worth saying that it's 10 years in the rearview mirror. And 2 or 3 times we had to just stop and wait for him to get his composure.
Yeah, it hurts. It's a deep wound.
And I think what that says is we didn't know him before today.
No.
When I hear military, 24-year military, I thought we're gonna have a macho guy in here. What I love about this, and what I love about meeting him in person, was a very, very loving human being, invested, and he is a tough guy. I mean, it's not like we were. I'm not saying that he's a biker. He's
all the stereotypes you think of. When you think
he
of tough
kind of
guys.
had all of those, but
he's also a man who loves his son, deeply loves his son and his family, and that's what moves him so much.
And I love that about him.
Yeah,
like I fell in love with him. Yeah. I think he's a fantastic guy. I think we could be friends if
absolutely.
we were living in the same town, and just seeing his.
And that's the humanity. Right,
I was about to say his humanity.
Yeah,
he's in touch with his humanity, and he's acknowledged it. He's not in, I don't know. I just think he's coming from a place of pretty honest.
We're all created equal.
Callback.
Really? I mean, it's your son he's talking about. It's your daughter. You know what I mean? Because that's how we get it. If we don't have our humanity sticking out, so to speak.
And I know that I would be the same if it were my daughter or my son,
right?
And so we do see. I saw myself in him today.
Sure.
And I think that's what made it so. We call it warm, or that I don't want to just. I don't really have any interest in talking with somebody from shallow to shallow. Mm-hmm. Like we're just going to keep it superficial because we're afraid of each other. We don't relate to each other. And I don't know. I want to go deep. I want deep. This is a biblical reference, by the way, but deep calling unto deep. I want my deep self to connect with his deep self, and it did.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a valuable conversation to me.
And that's why people enjoy listening to the show, because we get so little of it out there in the media and
people are afraid to be.
They don't want
real.
to. Yeah.
There's something about the anonymity, not only just of sometimes people literally go on anonymous, but
But even then, we have depth talks.
Oh, even more so. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
But I'm just saying the anonymity of like we're not. There's no cameras in here for one thing. It's just audio. We're probably being listened to in earbuds or in the privacy of a car.
Yeah.
Podcasts aren't something you listen to with a group of people at the same time.
Yeah, right.
So we're
whispering in your ear.
I don't even know where I was going with that.
But I think we are. I think there's an
intimacy.
An intimacy is a good way to put it. That's exactly it.
And that's at the end of the day, that's what I want. Mm-hmm. I want intimacy. I want reality. I want real relationships. And I think when I say, join the human race, I'm inviting people or inviting myself to be in community that is real. It's what I used to love about Christianity, but obviously because of the ideologies and all the dogmatic constructs therein, it had its limits. Mm-hmm. You drill down, and then there was a stopping place. And I think as atheists and as humanists and as naturalists and secularists, we broke that wall, and we can actually get even more honest.
Yeah,
because we don't have a theological ideal to uphold.
Mm-hmm.
We can get even more honest with, I didn't ask to be born. I'm literally an amoeba that grew out of, primordial goo, and here I am talking, and I don't have a leg to stand on as far as that's an achievement I did.
No,
my very existence is not an achievement of anybody, not even my mom.
It just sort of happens that way, when sperm meets ova.
After 9 months of gestation, I was coming out one way or the other. She didn't, nobody's actually doing a goddamn thing that we can boast about. I mean, I'm not talking about you make a work of art.
Yeah,
that's coming from you, and it's unique to you. That's different.
Yeah.
But the existentialness of what it means to be human is nobody's achievement.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another place for us to see ourselves as equals and establish some humility. Mm. In the age of Trump, my God, do we need humility?
Boy, you ain't kidding.
It's the opposite. I mean, he's just kicking and scratching for superiority. And these are scared people. Fuck this, man. I'm so fucking scared of insecure people trying to elevate themselves over others. The opposite direction the human race needs to be going in. So.
Yeah. Well said. Well said.
All right, now you can get me off the air.
Okay, now let's
do it again next week.
Yes, why not? In fact, I know next week's going to be a good one. We have a very strange story to hear next week.
Yeah.
So, can I say he was a lion tamer
at one point in his life as a young man?
As a young man, a lion tamer. I got to find out about this guy.
He's got pictures cuddling with lions.
Yeah. Wow.
And tigers.
And I think almost got killed, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
We're
going to hear that story.
Yeah, got his head in a lion or something.
Well, he dragged him off by the foot.
Oh, jeez.
Cats when they're trying to eat something, they want to take it off under the tree, so they don't have any competition for their prey.
So, and he's going to be here. So apparently they didn't get him.
Yeah, he lived to tell about it.
We will talk to him coming up.
All right, next week.
Yes.
What's on the other side of life? I won't know until the day I die. If you feel insecure, you are not alone. 'Cause everybody knows you might be wrong. Why do we argue? Why do we fight? Everybody thinks God's on their side. Just count to 10 before you throw a stone. Whatever you believe, you might be wrong. That'll get me kicked out of my family.